Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Board of Education meeting. If you just bear with us, we have just some housekeeping items, but we'll get right to why you're all here, so just bear with us a moment. In accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975 announcement, I wish to announce that the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the school districts of the Chatham's Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, place thereof posted in the Board Administrative offices, sent to the clerks of the Chatham Borough, the Chatham Township, the Library of the Chathams, the Chatham Courier, the Daily Record, the Star Ledger, and the TAP, which is an online newspaper. Mr. Tequila, would you mind taking attendance?
Mr. Gilfillan, Mr. Arnick, Ms. Ciccarelli, Ms. Clark,
Here.
Mr. D'Alessandro, Ms. Kenny, Mr. Ryan, Mr. Smith, and Ms. Weber.
Here.
7 present and counting.
Excellent. If you're able, please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is over by Dr. LaSousa. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Excellent. So again, just bear with us 5 more minutes. This is part of the reorganization meeting as well. So I'm going to move the first set of annual appointments. So to the board members, I'd like to move action A1 through A17. Anybody interested in seconding that? Okay. Peter, take your pick, Bradley or Ann. Again, these are mostly the purchasing agent, treasurer, more administrative stuff. And these agendas have been posted since Friday. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? There you go.
Duly noted, A1 to 17 on the reorg, passes 7-0.
Excellent. Over to you, Mr. Smith. Again, this is also part of our reorg process, our annual reorg. Any questions for Peter on any of these items? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Excellent.
Duly noted, passes 7-0 for agenda items B1 to 33.
Excellent. And finally, the last reorg item are these committees, which is action item C1.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Any questions? Any mutinies brewing? People don't want to be on particular committees? Anybody defecting? No. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Duly noted, C1 passes 7-0.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. Okay, very good. So now we're moving over to the regular business meeting. And in the interest of time, I don't have any president's comments now, but if anybody has met me, they know I'll have comments later. So I'm going to send it right over to Dr. LaSousa for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Ms. Weber. Just like at the last meeting, I have a brief presentation to run through. So if the board members want to jump down into the seats, we can do that. And then I'll go through it, and then you can come back up on stage and ask me any questions that you'd like. All right, the 2 items under my report are similar to the last meeting's items, which are to start off a status of schools. I know that everyone is still concerned about the remainder of the school year and what our plans are, and then after that I'll talk about the reason why most folks in the room are here, which has to do with staffing, budget, and how we're looking as we move into next year. So I'll remind everyone that since March 23rd, we've had updated guidance from our Department of Health, the New Jersey Department of Health, and that the key items that are of importance to us right now are that at the elementary school level, students may be spaced 3 feet apart from one another so long as they're masked. Whenever they're not masked, they must be 6 feet apart, which would mean when they eat lunch, for example. But the standard at the elementary level is 3 feet, which is pretty much how we've been operating for this entire school year. At the secondary level, if the COVID level of transmission in the community is either low or moderate, your secondary students can be at 3 feet of distance. But if the community rates are high or very high, then you have to retain the 6 feet or as close to 6 feet as possible in your classrooms at the secondary level. And again, I just want to point this out. It's important, but 6 feet, regardless of whether or not your students can be spaced 3 or 6 feet apart, 6 feet is the unit of measurement to identify close contacts. And that's significant because it's the close contacts that lead to quarantining. So as I've been, showing from meeting to meeting or time to time, New Jersey releases a COVID activity report every week. The most recent one came out last Thursday and contained data up until April 17th, which is at the bottom of the screen here. And again, for the 10th time in a row or something like that, we remain in a high level of transmission. So being in the orange means that, at least technically, we're not supposed to reduce the amount of distance that we have in place at the secondary level. So that's the first thing. Now, in speaking with our Department of Health and speaking with other superintendents, there seems to be some degree of, I don't want to say flexibility, but there's a taking into account of what's happening at the local level, even if you're in the orange. So in other words, there are high schools around us who might be bringing students back to school and moving toward the 3 feet, maybe not quite at 3 feet, but at least reducing from 6 feet. But it could be that they don't have many cases of COVID in their community at that local sort of level. And I spoke to our departments of health last week because we had our worst week since September 15th at the high school. We had another case reported today, so we're up to 20 cases in the past week at the high school. And as you can see, the high school kind of stands out in relation to the other schools where at least over the past 10 days or so, cases have really quieted down, which is good news for all of our other schools. But it was a busy week at the high school and not the best week that we've had. And you can see just in that 1 week, we're matching our high points from earlier on in the year, early in the fall, and in the winter. So I'll repeat something that I've said a couple of times now, which is our first priority this school year is to bring students back every day at the grade 6 through 12 level. And I think right now, as you all know, the goal for doing that was supposed to be April 19th. That had to be pushed off because of the level of transmission in the community. I think there are really only two ways we can consider bringing all the 6-12 students back every day. The first is to just do what we were planning, which is the staggered return of students based on cohorts, starting with grades 12 and 8, and push out a couple more weeks, hoping that the level of cases diminishes at the high school level at least. Or we can kind of just put CHS on hold, possibly indefinitely until the end of the year, and just resign ourselves to the fact that at the high school it might not be appropriate to bring students back altogether every day this year, and instead focus on the middle school, because of course the middle school, like I was just showing, has not had the type of case level that the high school has had. And I'll be honest with you, I'm inclined to lean in that direction. I don't want to say I would definitely not move to bring the high school students back every day, but at the current time, we certainly have to wait until cases cool off. And the issue that exists at the high school more so than than the middle school is that aside from the level of cases, each day that we get closer to the end of the year, there's more of a downside for high school students, meaning beginning around May 15th, we have award ceremonies, we have the fashion show, we have the spring musical, we have AP exams, we have a lot of big stuff happening at the high school beginning in the second half of May. And so if we get into a situation where we have students who either came to school sick or tested positive and had been in school in the 48 hours leading up to that point, we're going to have quite a number of students who have to quarantine. So as of now, looking forward, my plan would be to continue evaluating the weekly reports week to week. We'll see what Thursday yields. If Thursday is good news, then we could consider bringing middle school students back to school every day as soon as next week or the week after that. And then just sit tight at the high school with the realization that we might not make that goal at the high school this year. And then this bottom bullet is, of course, we'd like to bring students back the full length of school at the elementary school level. 6 feet is still very difficult for us if the students are outside of masks, meaning if they're eating at any point. So the principals and the administrative team is still discussing ideas around that, but at the current time, we don't have any immediate plans to bring back students at the elementary level for full days of school just yet. So that's where we are there. I will mention, since I know parents are asking about this, as we look toward the fall, Governor Murphy has made certain statements, but we have not yet received any direct explicit guidance from the Department of Health or the Department of Education. In order for us to get back to a semi-normal schedule, we need to either be able to utilize 3 feet of distance at all times at all grade levels, including when we eat. Don't know what happened there, Connor. Or we need to have no distancing requirements. And I don't know which one of those may or may not happen, but absent that type of change, then we're either going to have to continue on some type of abbreviated schedule to avoid serving lunch in school, or we're going to have to blow up our schedules so that we insert more lunch periods into pretty much every school schedule and every school day. So just as an example, at the middle school, instead of having 3 lunch periods, we might have to do 6. Or we have to expand where students are eating and find a way to supervise them, but essentially have them eating all over the school, in hallways, outdoors if the weather's good, any large space that we can get a hold of. In addition, and this is for the parents who might be watching, there continue to be indications that the option to have students learn virtually will be dramatically reduced next year, if it exists at all. That's something just to be prepared for. If you're a parent who has opted for your child to be on virtual instruction all the year, that might not be an option next year, at least not in the same way. We still may have universal masking requirements, though we don't know that. We may have quarantining protocols that are similar to the ones we have now, but we don't know that. And of course, we're hitting a point right now where a lot of our students at the high school are getting vaccinated, and that could lead potentially to some type of quicker return to normal for them. But again, all of that, we're in a holding pattern awaiting guidance from either the DOE or the DOH on how to transition into these kinds of new rules and new protocols that hopefully we'll have at the ready for next year. All right, looking at enrollment and staffing and budget, which are all tied together, of course. This is a slide I just copy and pasted from actually last year in March of 2020. And this was in my budget presentation right as we were shutting down. The very first day of the shutdown, we had a board meeting. And this was one of the slides in that presentation. And as you can see from this slide, this just depicts what we've been experiencing from an enrollment perspective in the district over the past 10 years. So the blue line is our pre-K through 3 total enrollment. It peaked about 10 years ago, 2009, 10 or so. It has steadily declined. And the high school is depicted in red, and it has steadily inclined. It actually peaked last year. I refreshed this chart from this year's enrollment data, which are the solid line here, and then what we're projecting for next year in terms of the dotted line. So this is just the dynamic that we've been looking at as a district over the past decade or so. And what's happened is that at our pre-K through 3 schools, we've lost the most enrollment. We had been running for a pretty long time with 300 as a normal. Classes of 300 were the norm. And we bounced up into the 330, 350, 360 range. And then when we came back down, we didn't stop at 300 and return to the norm. We've been declining gradually in recent years to well below 300. So right now what's happening is that the bubble that was moving through the high school is exiting the high school. In fact, the largest grade level in the district right now is the 12th grade at 360. And behind them, we're getting smaller and smaller cohorts of students, which is translating into enrollment loss at every level. Projecting into next year, and the projections are just based on students that are currently in the district and students who have registered so far. We have the same level of decline at the pre-K through 3 level. You can see it's about 30%. Lafayette now is starting to lose more students. Lafayette was at a peak of 712 6 or 7 years ago, and Lafayette's at about 590 now. Lafayette's gone from 32 sections total to 28, and next year we'll be at 27. And as these smaller cohorts come through the system, these bars will grow and we'll lose more and more enrollment at each building. I also went back, and this is just interesting to look at. We had a demographic analysis done 2 years ago, or 2 school years ago, 2018, 2019, by someone named Richard Grip. He's a professional demographer. And he had some slides about birth rates. And what he did was he went and looked at births by the attendance area. You can see Milton, Southern, and Washington. And when they, the years and how many kids were born in those districts. And if you look at the top rows of numbers, you can see some big numbers, some hundreds and 90s and 80s. And if you think about it, 2003 was 18 years ago, roughly. These are our seniors. This big class that we have is comprised of kids that were born in 2003 or 2004, thereabouts. And if you look at the bottom, you can see that further on down the road in 2014, 15, 16, those numbers have really dramatically declined. So at the peak of 116 at Southern, 2016, which was the latest year he had, we're down at 48. So literally fewer than half as many students being born into these neighborhood zones. So that's and if you think about these years, 2015, 2016, those are the students that are hitting kindergarten and first grade now. And that's why our classes are shrinking. The other interesting thing about his presentation I found was he had projected that our enrollment would very gradually start to decline because even though the birth rates had fallen off so much, he noted that people were moving into Chatham and offsetting the lower birth rates. So his projected enrollment decline from when he gave the presentation in the fall of 2018 are these blue bars, and then the red bars are our actual enrollment. And you can see we were pretty close for the first couple years, but this past year, whether this is pandemic related or not, who knows, but we've had a much bigger drop off in actual enrollment versus projected enrollment in the past year. And if you think about our peak being somewhere in the 4,200 range, we're down below 3,900 now as a district, which was an unusual drop off year over year. So the first impact of sustained enrollment decline, of course, as many of the people in this room know, is that we reduce classroom teachers. So All of the folks here who are in our K-5 schools know that there have been colleagues of theirs who we've met with at this time of the year over the past 6 or 7 years every year, and have had to explain to them that we don't have a spot for them because we don't have enough students to generate the sections that we used to have. So the example that I've been giving here and there is that if we have 120 students enter Southern Boulevard School one year in first grade, we would have 6 first grade teachers, 6 first grade sections, 20 students in each section. If the next year only 100 students register for first grade in Southern, then we drop down to 5. And that 6th teacher would be a non-tenured teacher, presumably, and we would speak with her and explain that we don't have a spot, we wish her the best, or maybe we have a retirement across town at Washington, and if she's interested in that position, we can move her over there. But we've had a lot of movement at K-5 over the past bunch of years because we've been losing sections in each school. So those of you who are at Washington know that for a while we had 5 sections in first grade, 5 sections in second, 5 sections in third grade. We had 15 sections, grades 1 through 3 at Washington. Next year we'll have 12. We've lost 20% of our sections at Washington. Milton's high water mark was 13 sections, grades 1 through 3. This year we have 9, so 13 down to 9. So the first sort of, level of reduction that we've been experiencing has been at that homeroom or classroom level teacher. Of course, another impact there is paraprofessional staff, because our paraprofessionals we hire primarily to support our special education learners, and sometimes they support special education learners in a one-on-one type of framework of support, and other times, of course, they're supporting sections. If we have a number of students in one section, we would have a paraprofessional who might be supporting that section and the learners that are in that section. Third level of impact would be specialist teachers, because specialist teachers, their schedules are based in large part, or at least in significant part, on the number of sections that are in a given school. So if a given school has 20 sections one year, but over time drops down to 14 sections, that obviously reduces the scheduling of that teacher or that specialist. There are just fewer assignments to teach. And eventually you can reach a tipping point, like we have, where if you have 30% of your sections or 30% of your students that are no longer there, you might not need the same level of staffing in the specialist positions as you once did. And as this enrollment decline continues through the schools, what's going to happen is that this is going to impact multiple areas, multiple grade levels, multiple levels of staffing in the district. This is going to be something that we are dealing with year after year for the foreseeable future. There's no real way to avoid that from my point of view. So in 12th grade right now, as I mentioned, we have 360 students. Second grade, we have 260. You can understand that if that's the level of difference and that second grade class becomes more of a norm as it moves through the district, if similar classes behind them have the same type of enrollment, we're just going to need less staff. First grade is 221 right now, and at the current time, our incoming first grade is also 221. We know we'll lose a few of those students because we've had some of them move already out of town, and we're just keeping them on in a virtual way because it's been such a difficult year. But 221 should go up, assuming that people move into town and we have more families register their students for first grade. But we'll see. That's something we'll be monitoring all throughout the summer. When we reduce staff, whether it's a section or it's a specialist, we are not doing it to change the program. The idea is to continue to offer the same programming that we have with fewer staff, because we just don't need the same level of staffing based on the sections and enrollment that we have. So moving into this year's budget, what this year's budget reflects at the elementary level is one less teacher at Washington Avenue, one less teacher at Southern, one less teacher at Lafayette, and one less library media center specialist at pre-K through 3. So that would be 2 library and media center specialists as opposed to 3. At the secondary level, we are looking at collapsing about a half a teacher at the high school and collapsing both of the media center specialist positions into 1. And that's not a direct line to enrollment. That has to do with the fact that we've examined how those spaces are utilized, how often teachers are engaging the LMC specialists for direct instruction for their classes, how often they're arranging for direct whole class research type opportunities. And our feeling is we have plenty of talent in the roles of library media center specialists. We think we can collapse those 2 positions, and 1 individual can coordinate the programming that the students are receiving 6 through 12. Obviously, that person would need support. That person would need cooperation and coordination from the principals. But we believe we can make that adjustment and provide the same level of direct LMC specialist programming to students as we have been. And then, needless to say, as most of the folks in this room know, reductions, when I talk about reductions, I'm talking about positions, but the human beings that actually are impacted end up resulting from tenure versus non-tenure status, and then seniority in the district and in certain positions. So I mention that to say it's not a comment on when we reduce any position, whether it's the classroom teacher at Southern Boulevard School for next year or it's someone else. It's not that we necessarily think that person isn't excellent at what she or he does. It's that they just might be the last one in the pecking order in terms of hire date or other types of seniority considerations. So looking at next year and then even beyond that a little bit, the operating budget every year will continue to reflect staffing needs, which reflect the enrollment and which also reflect not just enrollment, but what we believe we need in order to continue operating efficiently and operating the district as we have in terms of programming for students. There is plenty of uncertainty out there. I just showed charts about birth rates. I don't know what impact the pandemic will have on that kind of thing. The housing market in Chatham obviously is very tight and explosive at the moment. Public school enrollment has declined pretty much across the United States, as some of you probably know, and has declined in New Jersey. And there are open questions about what that will mean, or will that continue, or will that change as we exit the pandemic and are able to get kids back into school more frequently. There are new housing developments in Chatham. Chatham Borough has been great about involving us in discussions about the pilot over on River Road. But there are multiple housing projects right now, and who knows what the intersection is between pandemic and people leaving New York City and whatever else, and the developments that are happening in town. And then, of course, as I said before, the rules from the DOH and DOE are changing continually. So that's something that we'll have to deal with possibly beyond even next year. So that's an overview of the, couple of things from where I left off at the last meeting, and I'll invite the board members back up on the stage to talk about anything they'd like.
Well, thanks, Mike. That was helpful. A lot of us have seen those slides before. I just have a quick question. I'm sure the other board members do as well. As it relates to opening schools up, it certainly looks like it's more and more like it's less likely or less beneficial, certainly at the high school level. Is there an opportunity to bring back a grade or 2 grades, or it's not possible?
The issue
beneficial.
the issue with doing grade by grade at the high school and this is true of the middle school too, I guess. But like, let's just say we really wanted to bring the seniors back. Then the seniors are going to be packed in the classrooms that the seniors attend. So if we have the type of situation we had last week, where last week essentially what happened is we had our second legitimate outbreak of the year. We had one outbreak right after Labor Day. We had another outbreak last week, which at least in part was the result of social activities on the weekend before. If that happens and it infiltrates the senior class, you'll have many seniors who get bounced out of extracurricular activities for a 2-week period of time, if they're not vaccinated. Michelle and I were talking earlier about now that as of April 19th, all 16-year-olds in New Jersey were eligible for the vaccine. Our high school tried to broker appointments for our students last week. We could get to a point somewhat soon where we have more fully vaccinated kids, and that might help give us peace of mind if we do have some type of outbreak. But as of right now, it would still be pretty risky to bring those students all back together if we don't want to interrupt a lot with extracurricular rites of passage senior year.
So just to clarify, so let's say a portion of our junior class and a portion of our senior class are vaccinated. We get to the 3 weeks and the 2 weeks, we get 5 weeks out. Are they held to the same New Jersey standards that they do not have to quarantine, that they, but they are still required to have the 3 feet distance in the classroom and the 6 feet? Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yep.
Does anybody else have any questions, maybe on the return to school? Go ahead, Mike.
Dr. LaSouza, did you happen to see the report that came out from MIT today?
Yes.
Any comments about that? It's promising.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are 2 ways to read the report. So it was a study that basically, according to these researchers, if you're in an indoor environment, whether you're 6 feet apart from someone or 60 feet apart, you have the same level of risk. And part of their argument is that the limitations on capacity are not warranted. But they also kind of said that the key to keeping lots of people together indoors, well, you could either keep people outside, and that would eliminate risk, or you have to really ventilate whatever setting you're in to keep the risk at a minimum from a COVID perspective. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the calculation for the number of bodies in a classroom and the type of ventilation systems we have, and at what point the turnover is great enough. We've had architects do, sort of preliminary analyses, and I've read about the carbon dioxide meters and things like that. But at least as of right now, the current guidance that we have doesn't reflect the latest study, and I'd want to be careful about making sure we've got all the windows open, and if we're going to bring the kids in all at once, if we've got transmission happening in the community, that we're just taking every step possible to make sure that we're not going to have an outbreak of some kind.
Do we have a method of keeping track of what students are vaccinated, especially at the senior level, as we talked about, being that they have so little time left? If we were to find out that 80% of the senior class is vaccinated, does that help us at all in terms of making any decisions on bringing them back a little bit more frequently, especially with, things like fashion show and prom and graduation and all those things coming up, just to kind of have an idea of where that class stands as far as vaccinations go?
It would help. We've talked about this, and I've kind of said to everyone, let's not try to get at this just yet, and let's just deal with people when we know that there's a close contact. One of our questions now is, are you vaccinated, and when did the vaccinations happen? Usually our school nurses collect all of the information about immunizations in the summer, and it becomes part of the student file. If we were to do that now, we'd have to just make sure that we can find out when the dates of the vaccination were, get documentation for when they were, and then store it in Genesis or in a health file so that we know and verify which students have been vaccinated and not. And I think you guys are probably right that that's something I was thinking we were going to have to do that for September, but maybe we have to move up the timeline because there's such greater access to vaccines now than there was even a month ago.
Any other questions on that? Okay, then I'd like to just comment on the second portion of your presentation regarding budget and staffing and enrollment. And we've been talking about this for several years. And exactly this topic was on the docket right before we had to shut the schools, never imagining we were actually going to be shutting the schools. So, again, this is just my opinion, but and in committee we've had this discussion. From a board perspective, this is more of an administrative decision. This is a staffing. I see this as a staffing adjustment. I think we all agree in the room, in the table, out in town that the programs and the services, we want to keep them. I'd hate to think that we are keeping programs and services alive that were not working. So we definitely want to maintain the level of service. But I don't think we can sustain the same staffing level given the enrollment drop. We can't lose 140 kids between the bubble in senior year and the first graders at 221. And according to Dr. Grip's report, it's going to continue. Don't know what the pandemic is going to bring, and within 5 years there'll be some development in town as well. But again, the easiest, it's funny, people on Facebook are mad at us when we hire staff, and they're mad at us when, unfortunately, the enrollment makes us reduce staff. So it's not really a win-win pleasant situation. But the easiest thing in the world, the absolute easiest thing for the 9 of us to do is just kick the can down the road and say, you know what, Mike, just keep us overstaffed, at 120, 100, however much the salaries and whatnot. This is not a financial decision. This is a operational decision. This is a efficiency decision. This is ensuring that the residents know that we're doing the best we can from a fiscal responsibility. Again, it would be super easy to just say, you know what, keep everybody on staff. This way aren't we the heroes? Everybody loves us on Facebook. Unfortunately, that's just not the role. The role is to not run the district. The role is to ensure that the district is run well, and part of that means being fiscally responsible. Again, if enrollment goes back up as it has over the last 10 years, we can adjust and, bring staff back on, or depending on the programs that are prevalent at that time, we can adjust. But I see this as more of an administrative staffing adjustment. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add to that or has any other questions for Mike on that.
We're going to talk about it later, too, right?
Sure, we could talk about it as much as you want. Okay, so let's move on. Mike, were you done with your portion of the program?
I will just thank Atlantic Health again for being here. They were at our middle school on Friday afternoon. It went well, I think. We had about 30 people that had signed up at least before they had arrived. And that's just one more layer of help. And because last week was such a busy week, it might have been helpful for staff members and families if they wanted to be tested, just to be sure that they hadn't contracted COVID. So a thank you to them.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Does the district then get so if we're hosting the testing, do we get the information, or is it because of HIPAA, does that just go directly to the patient? And
Correct.
We
We
don't
don't get anything.
So we're still
Just to the
relying on
patient.
them
Yep.
to report back.
Any other questions? Nope, for now. Great. Peter, over to you.
On the construction report, we're just continuing with the planning for all of the summer capital work, so it's kind of quiet right now, all just in the planning stage. We will be able to hit the ground running once school ends, starting on the roof projects, and the HVAC unit for the high school Lafayette band room has been ordered and is being fabricated. That's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Given your we're subject to the zoning and not the zoning, the inspection, I think, in Madison. Are there restrictions for COVID on, do we need to get on people's schedules now to have things inspected so that we're not jammed up in August?
For the projects that are in the borough, we're subject to Madison. For the projects that are in the township, we work with the township. We will relay the construction schedule with both departments so that we don't have any problems. And last year, with the little bit of work we did, we didn't have any issues, so I'm not anticipating any this year.
Okay, excellent. What? Oh, really? Excellent, very good. Over to committee reports, and for personnel.
Yes, we met on April 12th. We talked about current staffing, we talked about recruitment for the future, and CJ Pride, which is an organization geared towards diversifying the workforce. And we are meeting again on May 5th.
Thank you. Ms. Kenny for curriculum?
Yes, we met on April 12th as well. We discussed statewide testing, and at this point there is not going to be any state testing, but they are going to be requiring assessment data that the district will need to provide. There is discussion about state testing in the fall, and but it's uncertain exactly what grades and what is going to be involved at this point. And lastly, we discussed the calendar, which is on the agenda for the 2021-2022 school year. I'm sorry, the 2022-2023 school year.
On the testing, either Lotta or Mike, I should probably remember this, but I don't. They're giving us a buy for this spring. Is there any gotchas in the fall that they're going to say you have to do additional testing that we're not typically prepared for?
Yes, we are going to have to test in September, I think it is, or October, or do we know for sure, Karen? I don't know. The part of the waiver was the intention that New Jersey would test in the fall.
Okay.
And use the Start Strong assessment that it had developed and administered to districts on a volunteer basis last fall.
And do you have any idea of the fall testing, how disruptive that will be?
I've got no clue.
I don't think I've read about the assessment. I don't think it's as long. They're shorter sessions, right, Karen? It's not as many. It's not like a week in the K through 3. The third grade. It's not a week long of testing. I think it's shorter. I don't know where I read this. Maybe I'm probably dreaming and hoping.
Ridiculous. Okay, thank you. You'll let us know then. I'm concerned about, the disruption. The kids are just going to be coming back full time and then off to testing. Policy and planning. Oh, sorry, finance and facilities. Mike Ryan?
Yeah, we met on April 19th. We discussed the final budget, which is coming in at a 1.88 tax increase. We discussed plans for 2021 and the COVID rates. Some summer work that needs to be done, adding ventilation to 5 classrooms using ESSER funds. And we're doing some research on MERV 13 filters. Capital work needed at the high school to renovate the nurses' restroom to make it ADA compliant. Finalize staffing and items we might need for the next school year, such as tents, air purifiers, desks, or tables. That's it.
That's it for finance. Any questions for anybody on finance? Nope. Excellent. Okay, back to you, Mike, for policy and planning, please.
Also met on the 19th. We discussed a request from the CPAG to have a board liaison. The committee thought that was appropriate. In some ways, we need to figure out how that would look. The potential for non-resident tuition students 3 non-resident tuition students. School status again. And the last item was library and media center positions and second readings of all the policies on the agenda this evening.
Excellent, thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments on any of those items? No? No. Okay, excellent. Does anybody have anything from a liaison? You got it? Oh, look at that. Wow. Oh, you do too? Okay, so we'll let Ann go and then Lotta.
So we met with the Borough Council, Dr. LaSousa, myself, and Mike Ryan on April 5th to discuss the upcoming pilot program, the River Road project, and to just kind of see how that's going to affect the district and how their demographers and their developers see the numbers coming in and what they're projecting and how they plan to proceed to help to fund the district through the pilot program. So nothing was determined, but we are in great communication with the borough and very open communication and seem to be moving in the right direction. We'll update as we know.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you, Ann and Mike, for attending that, and Dr. LaSousa. Lotta?
Yes, for the Chatham Education Foundation, they'd like you to know that the video recordings of the town hall with Dr. LaSousa and the CEF Evening of Recognition and Grant Showcase is on...
Sorry, Lotta. I'm like 4 feet from you and I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, okay. Is this... Sorry. CEF would like to you know that the video recordings of the town hall with Dr. LaSousa and the CEF Evening of Recognition and Grant Showcase is available on the YouTube channel Chatham Ed Foundation. And currently they are undergoing their spring appeal, and along with that, the teacher tributes will begin next week on May 3rd. And lastly, the TEDx is going to be on June 11th. And all of this can be found on chathamedfoundation.org.
Is TEDx virtual or unknown?
I think it's going to be virtual.
It's going to be virtual. There may be a viewing here just for the students who are presenting, but it will be virtual, similar to last year.
Right. I mean, if the students' parents want to sit in the audience, is there room for...
Yes, that's what we're working. We're working on that. We don't have that all finalized yet.
Okay, excellent. Any other... Anybody else got any emails they want to share with us? Nope. Excellent. Great. So moving right along, I'm going to make a motion to pass the minutes of the March 22nd public session. There was no executive session. Peter, could you remind me who was... Ah, the A-team. Excellent. Okay. So all those in favor? Ann seconded it. You just didn't hear her. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, okay. Part of the program we've all been waiting for. Excellent. So we have our first opportunity for public commentary. Hearing of the citizens during public commentary section of the agenda is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are or are not topics scheduled for the current meeting. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers will be asked to limit their comments to a reasonable length of time. So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves, and just so I can gauge, is there any way, and you're not committed, can I just show a hands of who's going to get up to the mic to talk? Excellent. Perfect. Thank you. So we're going to try and limit it to 3 to 4 minutes so that everybody has a chance to be heard. So that's fantastic. Thank you. And if you raise your hand and you change your mind, that's fine. If you didn't raise your hand and you change your mind, that's also fine.
And as a quick reminder, before or after you speak, please sign on the sheet that's on the table to your right of the microphone.
If you see me waving this, it means like you have about 30 seconds and try to wrap it up. You can always get to the end of the line if you feel, to give other people a chance.
Connor, you all don't have to line up. You could just, sit in your seat and wait. We're not going anywhere. Connor, do you want my mic over there so they can alternate and they don't have to congregate in that hallway? Excellent. I think it'll be easier if we have a couple of mics going and people will be happy that I don't have one. Go to the switching sides to move through the line. What say you, Connor and John? Excellent. Okay, Ms. Devlin, the floor is
Okay.
yours.
Jane Devlin. Now I'm in Mendham, 20-plus year resident of Chatham Township. I guess I'm an alum. And Jane. So the library media program at the school district of the Chathams is designed to foster a love of reading and develop information literacy skills, which will enable our students to think critically and become ethical and responsible members of society. Our goal is to produce successful and inquisitive learners who are effective and ethical users of information, critical thinkers, skilled researchers, and avid readers across all areas and disciplines. Technical help. Thank you. The school library media program promotes inquiry, reading as a foundational skill for learning and personal professional growth, collaboration among students and staff, and the development of lifelong learners, users, and producers of information and ideas. The school library media program provides instruction that develops multiple literacies in our learners, including information literacy, media literacy, and technological literacy. Those are not my words. Those words come directly from the school district of the Chathams. So I'm hoping, even though my nieces and nephews have moved on from this district, the last is graduating this June, and I thank the district for the excellent education they receive through K through 12. So I'm hoping for the next generation of students that same excellence that is the district's hallmark. That excellence, I believe, will be compromised, and students will lose out on so much if budget adjustments call for diluting our library media scholarly program and the dedicated certified librarians who compromise it. No, a program is not the same if you cut staff and expect to provide the same quality and quantity of services. I want to please close by saying, don't ask for public input by way of a public hearing, but or if you already have your minds made up. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Hello. I'm George Iannuzzi, English teacher, Chatham Middle School. I am here, like probably a lot of others, to express my disappointment in the decision to remove the full-time library media specialist from my school. It was said tonight that there was evaluations made on how the space is used by all the teachers. I wasn't asked, and as far as I know, my colleagues weren't either. So along those lines, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about how, as an English teacher, I use that space. I rely heavily on the services and support provided by the Library Media Center, but more importantly, the Library Media Specialist. Sometimes that support is spur of the moment, like when a student needs a free reading book. After a conversation with the Library Media Specialist, even my most reluctant readers come back to my classroom with a book they are interested in reading. Other times, the Library Media Specialist assists with instruction, teaching lessons that expand students' knowledge of books and their role in their world. In fact, in 2017, one of these collaborative lessons I taught with the Library Media Specialist was recognized as especially powerful and meaningful for students by the Assistant Superintendent, and we have continued to teach it since. Perhaps most important, I can rely on the Library Media Specialist to help me respond directly to students' questions and needs. Like earlier this spring, when my students requested a list of joyful stories about identity after conversations we were having in class. By the end of that same day, I had a cart of novels in my room to offer students, as well as information about the texts that I was not familiar with, sending the message to students that their teachers and library media specialists value their curiosity and appreciate their desire to learn more. All of these benefits go away without a full-time library media specialist in our school. I cannot guarantee that that reluctant reader will get a book that they love. I cannot guarantee that a library media specialist will be available to teach these lessons with me, and even if there is one available, the scheduling of those lessons becomes exponentially more difficult, as now I have to communicate with teachers between buildings to set them up. And I cannot guarantee that I will be able to respond to students and their questions while they are still on their minds without the support of a library media specialist to assist me. Ultimately, it's a fact that the removal of a full-time library media specialist from Chatham Middle School is a disservice to its students and its staff, and I encourage you to reconsider that decision. Thank you.
My name is Amy Reale. I'm sorry I tried to get in before the library. I just have a few quick announcements that are unrelated, but I support, I'm so happy to see people here tonight in support of literacy. I just have a CPAG update. CPAG is the Special Education Parent Advisory Group, and I just wanted to make sure I personally thanked Brad Smith, who came to our last joint meeting. And we really appreciate you offering your time, as well as Dr. LaSousa. We haven't been able to have a joint meeting, so that was helpful for us. Thank you for your time. I wanted to also quickly announce that we have an open house Zoom this Friday, which will be posted on Facebook and on our site. It's 9 to 10 a.m. If you want to discuss IEP versus 504, if you want to talk about just entering the process, anything is up for grabs. We welcome anybody to join us. And lastly, this has been a 1.5-year endeavor, and I'm most excited to announce that Jonathan Mooney, who's a nationally recognized speaker and author of 3 books, the most recent one is called Normal Sex: How to Live, Learn, and Thrive Outside the Lines. He is coming to speak to Chatham on Thursday, May 20th, from 7 to 8 p.m. And one of our members, like I said, has been working 1.5 years to secure this. This is a presenter that I think would interest a lot of high schoolers, middle school students, parents, educators, even outside of the special education community. There will be a flyer soon on that. And then, as someone who has come here and spoken about literacy and efficiency so frequently, if there's anyone in this room, or for all of those who care about literacy in this room, I would also suggest, as CPAG has been asking questions about our curriculum, one easy way to look at is a podcast by Emily Hamford and APM Reporting, who looks at the effects of programs like Fountains and Pinnell and Lucy Calkins and does a really excellent job reporting. So since I have some literacy specialists in the house, I thought I would mention that. Thank you again.
Hello, I'm Karen Doherty, and I am a library media specialist. But I'm here to read a letter from Dr. Juliet Maki, Executive Director of the New Jersey Library Association. Dear Dr. L'Souza, I write on behalf of the membership of the New Jersey Library Association to urge you and the board of the School District of the Chathams to reconsider the proposal to reduce the number of school media library specialists in the School District of the Chathams. School library media specialists serve as knowledge conduits to students and teachers. Often, it is the school library media specialists that help students to connect the dots between classroom learning and application. Over the past year, in the abrupt transition to digital learning, school media library specialists Zoomed homework help, used their phones to teach digital literacy, and tempered the digital learning anxieties of many students and their parents. Of consequence is the fact that the current pandemic magnified digital inequities among our citizens. Our students depend on their school media library specialists for digital literacy, coaching, and guidance on how to navigate the digital resources. The availability of school media library specialists to students is imperative to the achievement of learning outcomes. We live in a challenging educational environment where students and teachers must continuously learn how to use the latest technological advancements to enhance the vast amounts of information which confront us every day. A school media library specialist is a strong academic partner to the other teaching staff in our schools. Eliminating these critical learning partners negates the essential intent of the School District of the Chathams to, I quote, discover and grow the gifts within each child, end quote. I urge you on behalf of the New Jersey Library Association to ensure that the students at the School District of the Chathams are equipped to meet the challenges of today's digital, knowledge-driven, and technology-powered economy. Please do not eliminate or reduce the number of school media library specialists in your district. Doing so will diminish your students' capacity to learn, grow, and thrive in a rapidly changing world. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Cindy Gagliardi, and I'm an English teacher at Chatham High School. I'm in a unique position to speak tonight as I wear several hats. I'm a former resident of this town. I'm a graduate of Chatham Township High School class of '88. I've been teaching English at Chatham High School for 24 of my 27 years in the district, and I'm a parent of 2 college students. I hope that my words and the sentiments of some members of the CHS ELA department will carry weight as I advocate for the status of the full-time library media specialist to remain at CHS. When I graduated from this building, there were fewer than 500 students enrolled. We had 1 librarian. Granted, we had no computers. If we needed to research, there were always the green Reader's Guide to periodical literature volumes to comb through, microfiche to view, and books to check out. But we always needed assistance to do any of those things. I could never feed the microfiche properly. I could never quite remember how to search the Reader's Guide. And don't get me started on the card catalog. But the librarian was our rock, our ticket to the secret places where research lay. And for those of us who love to read, we had books upon books on which we could feast. The current enrollment at Chatham High School is roughly 1,300 students. We have 1 librarian, and the proposal is to cut him in half. Granted, we have computers, but if students need to research, there are hundreds and thousands of resources stored in dozens of online databases, like JSTOR and GaleNet and ProQuest. There are Google sources to scroll through and books to check out. And students always need assistance to do any of those things. And so do their teachers. Our librarian is our rock. And for those of us who love to read, he shares books upon books with us. Mike Curran is a necessity full-time here at Chatham High School. I'm abbreviating these comments, don't worry. He teaches all of our freshmen how to navigate Schoology and the resources here at the high school, very different terrain from that at CMS. He's invaluable during those first few weeks of school for these new students. Classroom teachers also should not be expected to do this in addition to everything else on our plates. He teaches our classes about how to access the 23 distinctly different online databases. We cannot possibly educate ourselves on all of these resources, and we would need to know them before assigning any research-based projects to our students. In the English department, we regularly have him come to our classrooms or bring our classes to him in the library to do mini lessons covering information that we do not know. And to echo Mr. Iannuzzi's comments as well, I was never asked either how and when I've used our library media specialist. Another teacher in my department captured something very important. Quote, Mike oversees and provides guidance to more students in a day than most of us teach in a year. We know that the more adults that feel connected in a school building to the children reduces the likelihood that they will feel alone or lost or forgotten. And the library media specialist's unique position means that that person is able to engage in individual conversations with students in a way that classroom teachers cannot. Why would we want to reduce that? In closing, close to all members of the CHS ELA department contributed to the comments in my statement, and many of their sentiments overlapped, which sends a clear message about how essential having a full-time library media specialist is to not only the students, but also the staff he supports. In addition, to remove such a valued support system the year after we have all navigated and survived pandemic teaching seems particularly misguided. Why are our library media specialists a casualty of the budget at this point? It feels particularly harmful given all we've been asked to do as of late. As a member of the CHS ELA department, I ask you to please reconsider creating a shared library media specialist position between CHS and CMS and maintain them as full-time positions.
Dr. L'Souza, President Weber, and Board of Ed members. My name is Judy Hsu. I live at 342 Green Village Road in Green Village. I've lived in Chatham Township for 13 years, and my husband's lived in the township for over 25 or almost 25 years. I have a current 5th grader at Lafayette School and a 3rd grader at Washington Avenue School that both love their libraries based on the library media specialists that they have in those buildings. I'm here tonight to express my thoughts regarding the elimination of 2 library media specialist positions for the upcoming 2021-22 school year. I would also like you to know that I personally have worked as a school library media specialist for the last 19 years in both a middle school and a high school. So I am very familiar with the position. I think it's important to clarify that the role of the library media specialist extends far beyond checking out books. This is a comment I get all the time, like, oh, do kids still read books? This position requires a master's degree in information science or an advanced teaching degree with an additional library certification. Library media specialists teach students how to do advanced research, how to utilize the school databases that the district invests thousands of dollars on each year, how to evaluate mis- and disinformation on the web, how to cite correctly, how to avoid plagiarism. They inspire a love of reading, and they support struggling readers. They prepare students to be successful, independent researchers at the college level. They have a great depth of knowledge about the collections in their buildings, which helps them put the right books in the hands of our children when they need help. In addition to that, they collaborate with teachers in their buildings and curate resources that can be utilized as a resource for staff development. They also manage the administrative responsibilities related to managing and running the library and the library budget. Jill Mills, the librarian at Milton Avenue School that is being let go, is an exceptional library media specialist. Dr. L'Souza, you said during your town hall meeting on Thursday night that we're coming into a teacher shortage. And I can tell you from personal experience, there's a shortage of good librarians out there. Why would we want to let a librarian like Jill go, who's so beloved in the community and loved by her students? By cutting the position, there will also be less support to the teachers within each school as the library media specialist supports their needs as well as the students. I've heard that the current library, the middle school library media specialist was told she'll be returning to the classroom next year. And the plan is to have the high school media specialist cover both schools. Last Thursday, you mentioned that it's common to share specialists between the buildings when enrollment is down. Although the enrollment is decreasing at the kindergarten level, there are approximately 2,300 students and more than 150 staff members between the two buildings. How can one individual effectively support that many people? Which of the roles I mentioned earlier should that one person sharing those two schools eliminate next year? Should they not teach students advanced research skills or how to evaluate websites, how to support teachers in the curriculum, or do they not encourage students to read or connect them with the books
Please
because they're
finish
not in the
up.
building?
Thank you.
The other thing you haven't mentioned is what are the logistics? Is there one librarian 1 week in one school and one librarian is he in the other school the next week? What if my child has a question and they're at the middle school and he's not there at that time? Who will assist the high school students with research questions when Mr. Kern's at the middle school? Classroom
I'm
teachers.
sorry, but you need to finish up. You have approximately 30 more seconds.
Okay. The students and the staff of our district will be impacted the most by the decision to cut these positions. It should be known that there was a petition started by some 5th grade students to save the librarians at Lafayette School. The petition had over 100 names on it within a day before the principal shut the petition down. What message did that send to the students who are advocating for themselves and what they believe in? And also there were some parents who agreed with these concerns but had a schedule conflict that weren't able to attend the meeting tonight. The one thing I do want to, last thing I want to mention is you said that they're going to have help and they'll have paraprofessionals to help them. Would you have a paraprofessional cover an English or a history class, or would you have another teacher cover a history or English class for an extended period of time, or have somebody coach one of our sports that wasn't an expert in the sport that they were coaching? Why would you do that to the library media
I'm
position?
sorry, your time is up. Connor, please cut the mic and move on.
Hello.
So we can, I'm sorry, so we can avoid the situation of me having to step in. Please be wary of Ms. Clark, who's holding up a 30-second sign when you've done 2.5 minutes. I don't really like having to interrupt people, but I'm trying to be fair to everyone.
My name is Jennifer Kaplan. I live in the borough and I have 3 students in the public schools, 2 in the high school and 1 at Chatham Middle School. When I'm not a mom, I'm a professional children's book writer, and I am a tremendous supporter of Chatham schools, but I'm here to comment on the reduction in staffing of the library media centers. I'm very concerned about this decision as I fear it will undermine our libraries, our schools. I've actually felt that we are already understaffed, especially if you look at some of the neighboring districts. A library is the absolute heart of the school system. Having dedicated, knowledgeable librarians are critical. Paraprofessionals are wonderful, but the range of needs in school libraries is deceivingly broad. And I'm not sure the paras alone can meet the needs of all of our children. For example, how do you handle reluctant readers? How do you handle the child who's only inspired by nonfiction? How do you handle the well-read fantasy reader who's already read everything, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? I believe it's easy to hit the big notes with the masses with popular books, but that still misses a lot of children. In a world without full-time librarians, many of these children will not be adequately reached. They will quietly walk out of the library and they will not read. And because books expose kids to new ideas and make them think, another part of the decision that disturbs me are social justice repercussions. By undermining the libraries, the district is actually, and I understand inadvertently, but actually backtracking on their commitment to social justice. And what I mean by this is there are, for example, many fantastic LGBTQ children's books coming out this year. Will the paraprofessionals be able to adequately promote these books in the libraries? Will they be able to know enough to recommend one book over the other based on each student's preferences and needs? And what about books on contemporary Asian American struggles?
or Black Lives Matter, or male toxicity, bullying, or poverty. It's very unfortunate that the impact of the librarian can sometimes be hard to quantify and measure, but it nonetheless remains a very, very difficult job. Honestly, I'm baffled by the decision. Data has repeatedly proven that effective school libraries are tied to student performance, which are tied to test scores, which are tied to school rankings. And for those of you listening who do care about this of course is tied to real estate values. To be very blunt, every metric that this district cares about is tied to the library and our wonderful full-time librarians. And I don't think the consequences of the cutback will be immediate and obvious, but I am certain that they will eventually ripple through our community and they will hurt our children. I respectfully ask that you reconsider this decision through a broader, more careful, and conscientious lens. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carol Stubeck. I've lived in Chatham for 28 years and reside at 62 Washington Avenue. I am the parent of 3 children, all of whom attended and graduated from Chatham's fine K-12 schools. I am also in my 10th year as an elementary school librarian in a neighboring public school district, and am a member of the American Library Association and the American Association of School Librarians. I would first like to offer my sincerest thanks to the board and the superintendent for your many years of service, hard work, and dedication on behalf of our public schools. I will be reading the text of a letter addressed to you by the presidents of the American Library Association and the American Association of School Librarians, and thank you for the opportunity to do so. Dear Superintendent LaSousa, President Critchley Weber, and board members, at a moment when the ability to navigate a vast and constantly shifting world of information is a matter of profound consequence, we are alarmed to hear that the school district of the Chathams proposes to cut the number of certified information professionals, librarians, or school library media specialists, and leave students without appropriately staffed libraries. Your school librarians impact every learner in their communities, embedding a continuum of literacies across the curriculum and providing equitable access to resources, tools, and learning experiences that nurture critical thinking, exploration, and innovation. National school library standards paired with New Jersey's learning standards provide the framework upon which those skills and dispositions are built. That framework facilitates students' examination of diverse perspectives and experiences, collaboration towards individual and common goals, curation of resources for personal and academic growth, reflective practices that nurture exploration and innovation, and capable and ethical use of information technologies. More than 60 studies from across the country show that student achievement, from reading scores and digital proficiency to graduation rates, is higher in schools with professionally staffed libraries. The data alone, however, do not fully reflect the promise of Chatham students, nor the full value of an effective school library. Each of you has seen that promise in the face of a child, perhaps in one of the student writers whose work is published and shared by the library, or during the excitement swirling around Authors' Day, or in the empowerment of a youth who has translated their personal passion into discovery, action, and a path beyond high school. School librarians nurture that promise every day. Chatham school librarians have risen to the challenges of this past year with intentionality for the academic and emotional well-being of their learning communities, continuing to build a shared culture of reading and inquiry. Now, as districts address the impacts of COVID-19 on students, school librarians are integral to the community's resilience and to the priorities outlined by Education Secretary Cardona for allocation of the American Rescue Plan, elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds. We applaud Chatham schools for committing to a standard of excellence and equity in your guiding principles, but the district's budget proposal will weaken the very foundation of that commitment. Education in this information age requires full-time certified information specialists, and we urge you to appropriately staff all Chatham schools with full-time school librarians. Thank you.
Hi, excuse me. I'm Laura Friedenfeld. I have children at the high school and the middle school, and I'm also here as a PhD historian and researcher. So first I want to say I do appreciate the need to get the ratio of specialists to students right, and that we do have a certain pressure coming on the schools with the reduction in population. But I think that this decision to reduce the librarians this way is premature. So I looked at the numbers and compared our comparable districts, the ones we use as comparable for our budgets, to see what kind of ratios they have, and found that at 6 librarians, you know, we're kind of middle of the pack. We're doing pretty well. If we reduce to 4, we will have the worst ratio of any of our comparable districts, which suggests to me that we should be able to find the budget to keep our librarians, at least for the time being, until numbers, you know, shift some more. I'll say that my kids went to Washington, and I've heard of Ms. Mills. So I've heard how fantastic she is, how she connects with the students, how she's really up on the current reading for that age group. So, you know, I think it's really troubling to hear we'd be losing such a valued faculty member. As someone whose colleagues are all in higher education, we expect pretty sophisticated research skills of students when they arrive at college. So we expect that they should be familiar with JSTOR and the other databases that we have, luckily, are able to have subscriptions to. We ought to be teaching our students to use those. And then the other part can be deceptive. There's so much available free on the web. Searches on Google are so effective. We feel like, well, they've got it. You know, you can basically find what you need. The classroom teachers will take care of it. But that's not really true. Really, we expect at the college level a much more sophisticated ability to do research, to dig in, to find primary sources, and to learn how to ask smart questions of this massive amount of information that's out there on the web. And that's what our librarians are supposed to be teaching them here at the schools. And if you feel that that's not really happening, you know, in a robust way right now, then I would urge you to up the programming, figure out how to incorporate the librarians better, and bring them in to teach the faculty, maybe to teach the students, to take advantage of what they should be doing to support our students to become really effective researchers. Thank you.
My name is Gail Shepherdson, and I'm a social studies teacher at Chatham High School. I'm reading some comments that are coming from 7 tenured members of the social studies department. We are disappointed to learn of the reduction in library staff in our school district, and in Chatham High School in particular. The CHS library is an important place for students to gather and focus on their academic work in a sociable atmosphere. Having a professional librarian in charge of the library sets the tone for 2 separate and important missions. One is a crucial provider of research and instructional materials, and the other is a place that can be a haven and a sanctuary for people who need a private space to work. Talented adults assist in the library as aides. However, the students treat the library as a different, more sacred space because of the presence and expertise of the certified librarian. Students know that the library has a distinct identity from other proctored workspaces in the building, such as a cafeteria study hall or a computer lab. There's a unique authority and reassurance that the certified librarian provides that is invaluable. Without having a person in that role full-time, we're afraid that the library will become another cafeteria, useful for socializing and getting some schoolwork done, but without the higher value on focused learning that is associated with a library. Many of the well-known mental health benefits of the school library rely on the distinct school library environment that the certificated librarian helps to create. Talented adult aides also can and do assist students and teachers with requests for materials, but the certificated librarian specializes in this area and is best able to fill this role. The current librarian has been available to lead individual social studies classes on research strategies and database utility, to consult with teachers on resource acquisitions, and to select appropriate resources from our collection to bring into a particular classroom for a particular lesson. Approximately 3 years ago, our physical inventory of books was dramatically reduced. Considering the much reduced physical repository of information in the library, it's more crucial than ever to have that certificated librarian present to assist students with their research. The presence of a full-time professional librarian at the high school level better prepares students for their experiences in post-secondary education when they'll be expected to know how to navigate databases and utilize the other resources that collegiate libraries offer. It is our hope that the school district of the Chathams will continue to support the twin ideas of library as sanctuary and library as research center, and will adequately staff each of their individual schools with a full-time librarian. Thank you.
Dr. LaSouza, Board of Education, good evening. I'm Mary Zook. I'm the librarian at Washington Avenue School. 11 years ago, when I started at Chatham, Mike Deloy and I went between the three schools. We split Washington Avenue School. However, no one school got 100% attention. 10 years ago, when each school got its own librarian, the children now had open reign of the library, which K through 3 absolutely loves. The kids are used to coming to the library before school, after school, during lunch, to borrow whenever they want, to come in and just read. And throughout the day, classes come and use the library and check out books. I understand the 120 to 105 have to cut a class, and I know it has to be done, and it's sad. But I went through this same thing in Parsippany 11 years ago. After a year, the town did call and said it made a grave error in judgment. They needed their librarians back. I was thrilled and honored to be able to say I landed safely in Chatham. Just because you can physically cut the librarians and combine schools doesn't mean it's the best decision. Please, please reconsider making this change. It will affect so many children and families. Thank you for your time.
My statement is going to take over 3 minutes, so the gentleman behind me will pick up where I have to end. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
I'm sorry, you need to state your name first.
Beth Thomas. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I am Beth Thomas, the current president of the New Jersey Association of School Librarians. As you may know, Milton Avenue School Library Media Specialist Jill Mills is the immediate past president of NJZL. Through our work together, I've had the opportunity to get to know Jill as a leader, an educator, and as a friend. All the other letters and statements outline why cutting school library media specialists is a disservice to students and staff, and I will touch on that. But I want to focus the bulk of my letter on Jill as a leader, because in her leadership roles, she has served as an outstanding ambassador for the school district of the Chathams. It is never comfortable for someone to toot their own horn, as the saying goes, so I'm going to do that for Jill, in stating the myriad ways she has served her profession through her leadership work that does impact students, classroom teachers, and her fellow school library department members, although not everyone initially makes that connection. Jill is the current immediate past president of the state organization for school library media specialists. In her role as president, she had the opportunity to have discussions with the president of the State Board of Education, and she was part of a team who was invited by the New Jersey Department of Education to visit the DOE offices and give input on the 2020 draft standards for NJSLS 9.4, career readiness, life literacies, and key skills. Jill took personal days to be able to participate in this work, and I am so glad she did, because through NJZL's standards and curriculum team's efforts, for the very first time, certified school library media specialists and their importance in curating resources, delivering curriculum, and providing professional development is included in New Jersey student learning standards. Jill is also a past president of her county group, the Morris County School Media Association, and has been on this board for 15 years. She is also a former board member of the New Jersey Literacy Association, and she's a regular presenter and article writer about children's literature for the Rutgers Graduate School of Education. When everything shut down last year during the pandemic, many stakeholder groups were convened to discuss the impact on students and how to plan for a safe and academically sound return to school buildings. Last spring and summer, Jill represented schools on a statewide team of public, academic, and school librarians looking to program and plan in a post-COVID environment. She was also a committee member of the Governor's Road Back Restart and Recovery Plan for Education. As part of our work with the volunteer board, Jill and I have spent a lot of time together on evening meetings. I can't tell you how many times I could tell she was still in her library, hours after the school day ended,
working on tasks to help make materials more accessible for students and staff. One example is something Jill worked on for her supervisor and colleagues. They went through every record for books related to social emotional learning. Jill worked on the spreadsheet her supervisor created to add a drop-down cell to specify the specific social emotional competency each book highlighted. This is the kind of behind-the-scenes work school library and media specialists do all the time to increase access to the resources the district has invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in. The position of school library media specialist is truly unique, as we are not only teachers, we manage a facility. The resources provided through the school library do not magically appear. They are selected from professional journals and trade publications to align with district and building goals, the curriculum of the entire building, and the interests and abilities of the student population. I'll pass it over to you now.
I guess I should continue. She took personal days for that? I know Jill has tried to have discussions about connecting her collection at work with district initiatives, but she has tried to spread the word about how many ways the school media specialists can support, lend input, and lead in the district. I know she has immersed herself in diversity and social justice, professional development, and has been building diverse, culturally responsive, and SEL-focused collections for the entirety of her tenure at Milton, because that's what certified media specialists do. We've been doing it since they have become educational buzzwords. And don't let that phrase diminish what they are. We have known the importance of them, and because we have discussed them with our library professional realms for years, and it has been something that Jill has been passionate about. She is. In her years as president of NJSL, she is called to build up equity, diversity, and inclusivity in the committee that took the once existing one-person position and built it into a team that has addressed racial inequalities in our profession and in education as a whole. Sorry. Some districts will rationalize the decision to cut school library media specialist programs by saying that literacy needs of the students can be met within classroom libraries. As listed by a PhD just moments ago, it is our understanding that Chatham is utilizing a program, and although classroom library collections currently support literacy, they do not have the breadth and the depth of a school library collection. Moreover, resources purchased for for classroom libraries are available to a much smaller segment of the population. To a much larger segment of the population. Robust budgets enable school library media specialists to purchase resources that are current, diverse, support the curricular needs of the entire building, and address a range of learning abilities. The return on the investment to the school library cannot be overstated. Your school library media specialists serve all students and all teaching staff in your district. That's important. They are among the few educators who teach every student every year, and every student in that building. This consistency enables school library media specialists to foster relationships that make the learning personalized and truly possible. They are your district's best bargain. A school library media specialist is the highly qualified and certified educator of the largest classroom in the school. In Jill's situation, she is the only staff member who works with every student at Milton Avenue School. Her school library program are a constant for these children through all 6 years, something that prepares them for success in the 4th grade, the 5th grade, middle school, high school, and beyond. There's a lot more to this, but.
Good evening, Marty Visitation, Milton Avenue school teacher. I'm reading a letter from Sean Spiller, Vice President of the New Jersey Education Association. Dear Dr. Lususa and members of the board, I have learned of your unfortunate intention to eliminate the positions of your school library media specialist. While I cannot attend your meeting tonight to personally give you my thoughts on this ill-advised action, I write to provide you with information that I hope that will cause you to reconsider this plan. NJEA considers every New Jersey student must have access to comprehensive school library media programs within the educational setting. We believe these programs should be staffed by New Jersey licensed certified school librarians, educational media specialists, and qualified education support professionals. But in addition to that, it is just basic common sense that we need professionals in this area helping our students. As noted by the New Jersey Library Association in testimony to the New Jersey State Board of Education on January 8, 2020, school libraries with certified school library media specialists have a measurable effect on the reading scores of students across the country. They prepare students for success in college and careers by teaching the research, information, media, digital literacy skills required for the 21st century achievement. Certified school library media specialists lead and support technology integration and have demonstrated success with introducing cutting-edge technologies and practices into their schools. They are trained to develop current and diverse collections of print and digital media materials that address a range of ability levels. And certified school library media specialists create spaces within the school that are safe for all students and provide materials and activities to support social and emotional learning. According to a 2015 study by Elizabeth Coker from Washington State Library Associations, students who attend schools with certified school library media specialists and qualified school library facilities perform better on standardized tests and more likely to graduate even after controlling for school size and student income level. School library media specialists also promote literacy and inspire a lifelong love of reading and connect teachers and students with materials in a variety of formats that encourage growth and knowledge. The result is that certified school library media specialists have measurable impact on reading scores and overall student success. The comprehensive school library media program in the school district of the Chathams has surely helped the students in your communities achieve at exceedingly high levels that your district has enjoyed for many years. Given that the demonstrated economic advantages of your community, it would be great disservice to your community to sacrifice such an integral cornerstone of your educational success. It is my fervent hope that you will reconsider this proposed plan and sustain the library media specialists currently employed by your school district. Sincerely, Sean Spiller. On a final note, I've been in this district for a long time, and early on in my career, in a meeting with one of my administrators, as we discussed curriculum and planning, the line stuck in my head: Chatham sets the standard. We do not meet the standard. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Bonnie Lafazan. I am the current library director for Berkeley College in Woodbridge, New Jersey. I am also the past president of the ACRL New Jersey chapter, which is the Association of College and Research Libraries in New Jersey. I am reading this letter on behalf of Alyssa Valente, the current president of ACRL New Jersey. On behalf of the New Jersey Association of College and Research Libraries, New Jersey chapter, we are urging the Chatham School District to employ certified school media specialists in all school buildings. As an associate professor and chair of my community's college library, I know how important it is to have a full-time certified school media specialist in every school. Media specialists receive graduate level training in many areas which are essential to 21st century learning environment. No other faculty member is uniquely qualified to ensure that students are equipped with the skills to succeed in the increasingly competitive global economy. Skills like information literacy, critical thinking, finding, evaluating, and ethically using information. The lack of a school media specialist during a student's formative years weakens their preparedness and success in higher education and their success in the workplace. We live in challenging times where information overload is ever present, misinformation is widespread, and navigating the truths and facts is of utmost importance. A school library media specialist can help students learn to discern valid information from the abundance of sources they are faced with every day. These information literacy skills are lifelong learning skills, and school media specialists ensure that these skills are taught via developmentally appropriate pedagogical methods. Economic challenges are unfortunately the norm in education, but the critical role that a school library media specialist plays in the educational development of a student must be considered. As librarians in higher education settings, we see the results of school library media specialists every day. Students come into our college and research libraries fully prepared to use our resources are those that have a strong foundation in their local schools. A 2018 article written by 3 New Jersey librarians discusses the importance of school library media specialists across the library spectrum. They found that while classroom teachers played a pivotal role in a child's development, the librarian is the only school's information literacy expert and often the only staff member with the education expertise and time to ensure that all students are receiving an education in this area. The NJLA, CUS, ACRL, New Jersey Executive Board urges the Chatham Board of Education to ensure that all students are prepared to meet the challenges of the future by keeping all strong, qualified, and certified media specialists in your schools. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Amanda Turton, and I'm from Milton Avenue School, and I'm going to read some notes on behalf of the preschool team who couldn't be here just to share how the library media specialist has impacted their experience at Milton. The preschool team would like to share how the library media specialist is valuable to us and our students. This year, the library media specialist was the only other teacher that our preschoolers interacted with other than classroom staff. This exposure is important for our students because young students, especially those with special needs, have difficulty generalizing skills. The library media specialist is an important professional who can assist in helping our students generalize their skills. Preschool is the largest grade at Milton Avenue School with 7 classes. The library media specialist meets with each class weekly. Last year, pre-K classes met with the library media specialist twice a week on a rotating basis to provide pre-K teachers with their common planning time. Our preschool students, aged 3, 4, and 5, take books home weekly. The library media specialist is aware of books at the appropriate age level for these diverse group of students. The library media specialist can therefore provide pre-chosen books for our students to check out. The library media specialist coordinates with preschool teachers to find books related to the creative curriculum studies and places orders for any books not already in our Milton Library. Books are provided to us for our use during daily story time in class. The library media specialist is a valuable position which enriches our preschool curriculum. In addition to the library media specialist position being important for our students, they play a vital role in our students' educational experience. They have taken the time to collaborate with classroom teachers in preparing questions related to preschool text before reading during library time so that students with limited language, even a student using a communication device, would be able to participate in responding. The reduction of hours will negatively affect the preschool world and their learning as they first experience school. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mike Deloya, the SBS Library Media Specialist. I'm here to speak on the importance of having a school library media specialist in every building in the school district of the Chathams. We have outstanding library media centers in our district. Whenever visitors come to Southern Boulevard School, the first place that they stop is our library, and they are in awe. These libraries are excellent because of the full-time library media specialists. Chatham is a trendsetter, the leader, whereby other school districts look to model. Many of our schools are blue ribbon, and the library and media specialists have contributed to these accolades. Full-time library media specialists have a measurable impact on student success, increase test scores, and prepare students for the future. In addition, we support the classroom teachers. The president of the Follett School Solutions explains, where do children have the opportunity to enter the judgment-free zone and pick books and materials based on their interests and ability? Librarians are trained to help students become better readers, better digital citizens, and more informed people in general. Furthermore, he states, Librarians were fake news cops before talk of fake news was even a thing. Our school district has invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in our library media centers. It's an investment. Lance and Katz will remind us, no business would allow an investment of that value to be unmanaged or disconnected from the primary mission of the organization. Daily at Southern Boulevard School, students come to me for books and suggestions. The media specialist provides the youngest of readers with good literature, especially with COVID and being in front of the screen for all this time. It's more important than ever to have a full-time library media specialist for the students. The library staffed with a full-time library media specialist is a non-threatening environment whereby students can visit for a wide variety of reasons. Books are therapeutic, and the library media specialist guides the students. We are library and media specialists. I'll end with this quote that hangs outside the library at Southern Boulevard School. There is no friend as loyal as a book, and I'd like to add, the full-time librarian is the one who makes these introductions. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Fanning, a kindergarten teacher at Milton Avenue School. I'm here to just speak in support of our full-time media specialist here at Milton. We cannot imagine being without her. She provides guidance to teachers and students alike to locate content online and in the building to be used when teaching on very short notice. She creates videos with instructions for teachers and students alike to use such sources as Destiny, Mackinvia, and a link to the public library ebook collection. She identifies and provides resources such as Mailbox, Pebble Go, and the Capstone Interactive Library. Without the research and input that she provides, classroom teachers would not even be aware of some of these great resources. The library media specialist recommends and makes the necessary books and materials available to students and teachers, again, on short notice, providing resources that can be sent home with students to be used in a timely manner. With a limited budget, the full-time library media specialist is able to identify the needs of students in our school. She evaluates sources, especially online content, that is appropriate for use by teachers and students alike. She's been creative in planning activities based on literature. A highlight of this school year, and there haven't been many, has been a picture walk she created outdoors for all the students at Milton. Students and teachers were excited to follow the path created in reading stories that were interesting to all grade levels. This would be impossible to do without her full-time presence. She's recorded many story read-alouds for our students, as have other library media specialists in the other schools, to be utilized during remote instruction. She has a strong personal relationship with all students, but in particular my class of virtual kindergartners this year. These students have not stepped foot in a classroom the entire year, but with the video lessons, they've grown not only as readers, but as speakers. It's a joy to see and hear the children interact with her. In addition to all her school responsibilities, she drops off and delivers donated books collected from our students and staff to other locations. Please reconsider your decision. Thank you.
Okay. Joe Bezralian, Chatham Township. Looking around this room and listening to this room, I'm completely struck by the assemblage of intellect and talent and commitment. This is a subsection of some of the most incredible people in this community, from the administration's incredible talent to the volunteer spirit, power, and time of the Board of Education to the teachers who everyone in this room respects and regards so highly, to the parents who, if not teaching in this district, bring an extraordinary amount of depth professionally and personally to this discussion. So I think this is part of the power and really the greatness of our school district. One of the things we're incredibly proud of what you all have accomplished over the years is is fiscal prudence. You show statistics from the New Jersey Department of Education that along with our incredible results in this district comes the fiscal prudence. Our cost per student, our operational cost per student, is one of the lowest in Morris County, and you've showed that slide before, and that's to be extraordinarily commended. I think we do have to make a clear difference between maintaining fiscal prudence and becoming over-aggressive in our cost mindedness. So I had done this a couple weeks ago, but I didn't think I'd have to call it up. I pulled up the Department of Education's statewide statistics on its Taxpayer's Guide to Education Spending 2020. You're probably all aware of it. I pulled up again tonight Indicator 16 and 17. Indicator 16 is the ratio of students to classroom teachers. And I'm sure you're aware, we actually have about the fifth highest ratio of classroom teachers to, the fifth highest ratio of students to classroom teachers in all of Morris County, 30 plus school districts. We also have about the fifth highest ratio, according to this data, of students per educational support personnel. So yes, we keep our costs down, but we also have relatively very high ratios of students to teachers and students to administrative support. If we're already among those highest ratios, I don't think we should get overly aggressive in cutting staff further. We've been hearing for the 12 years that I've been here, every teacher said the #1 indicator of educational success in this district, nationwide, worldwide, is reading, and we're beaten over the head with that every day. That and of course sleep, as Dr. Lazuza rightly points out. So if this is the #1 message we're getting every day from the teachers, every teacher, I think we really have to realize this is not the place to be over-aggressive. The media specialist is not the place to get over-aggressive on costs. But overall, again, thank you for your fiscal prudence, and thank you for this incredible assemblage of talent that we call our community.
Good evening. I'm Jamie Trauger. I'm a first grade teacher at Milton Avenue School. I'm speaking on behalf of the other first grade teachers. One of the many roles that an elementary school teacher has is fostering a love of reading and a love of books. This is a shared responsibility between the classroom teacher and the library media specialist. As a school community, we were saddened and disappointed in what appeared to be a sudden decision to eliminate a full-time position within our school. The library media specialist has many interrelated roles within the school: leader, teacher and instructional partner, program manager, and informational specialist. Some may say that volunteers can assist when the library sits empty. While volunteers are helpful, they are not a replacement for the many facets our school librarian provides to our students. They don't know what book to recommend to the struggling reader who needs a book to encourage their early reading skills. They will not know about a new book series to recommend to a student who is eager to find a more challenging text. It is not a replacement for the expertise they provide as a colleague. And this is all done outside of the scheduled library time. As they continue to constantly learn more and more about best practices by attending conventions and professional developments during their own personal time, but not because they must, but because it is what is in their hearts as a passionate educator. For first grade at Milton, our librarian is an essential in evaluating our instructional resources for read-alouds in content areas, social emotional themes, and supporting lessons. The door is always open with a warm smile and ready willingness to help. In the time of COVID-19, when our school shut down in a matter of days, we can all remember that red wagon full of hundreds of books our library media specialists rescued from the shelves to share with our little ones. In a time of uncertainty, we were sure that books were needed. They didn't just stop there. Without being asked, they took the time to not only record, but playfully animate scenes and locations to the read-alouds to help students fall in love with reading and listening to stories, even if it was from a distance. As the year went on to the next, our librarian stepped out of the library to help aid whenever needed. To lose this full-time position and this person would be devastating to our students, our staff, and the entire Milton community. Thank you.
come up. Good evening. My name is Amy Kerr. I am a special ed teacher at Milton Avenue School. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of our second grade team who couldn't be here. Having our own full-time library media specialist is important for many reasons. Students at Milton Avenue are more likely to form a relationship with the library media specialist if they're always there, someone who truly knows their interests and abilities. Our full-time library media specialist has not only formed relationships with students, but has also inspired and motivated our students to not only read more, but to write their own stories. The library media specialist celebrates them and displays their work in the library for the entire school community to enjoy. Our full-time library media specialist allows for a space where students are given more opportunities to discuss books with the expert. Our full-time library media specialist allows teachers to have someone at all times to reach out to for mentor text ideas, supplemental resources, workshops, and community building service projects. Our full-time library media specialist allows for books to be available to students daily rather than just during library time. This was especially true during pre-COVID times. Our full-time library media specialist who focuses only on one school has been able to hand-pick books specific to student needs or teacher needs based on the relationship cultivated by always being present. As teachers, we always need to be flexible. At times, the plan changes, and having our information curator always present to suggest materials for last-minute changes is essential. Our full-time library media specialist has spent extra time training and scaffolding second graders on how to do research so they're prepared to do it independently in the second grade classroom. Our full-time library media specialist has also led a reader's theater class to incorporate voice, creativity, and a passion for reading outside the classroom. We at Milton Avenue understand that balancing a budget is a numbers game. We are not financial analysts, but we do teach some math. We can appreciate a good formula. So let's build this equation. Consider the number of students who are directly impacted by one individual, say in this case, a school library media specialist, and add to that the number of staff directly impacted by that same school library media specialist. So conservatively, we'll say all students and most staff. Divide the school library media specialist salary by that number. When you do the math, we think you'll find it's a great bargain.
Good evening. I'm Peggy Melvin. I'm a retired kindergarten teacher from Milton Avenue School. And I'm going to take everything that they've said, and it was part of what I was going to say, but I'm going to go back to two very important points. I have worked this summer. We had the storyteller in the Chatham Library unable to fulfill her duty for maybe a vacation or whatever, and Jill in Florham Park put together a story. I shared my shells from down at the shore, and we put it together. I didn't. She did. She put the whole thing together, and we did story time several times to fill in for the community, for the libraries of the Chatham. A second point I had to make is I'm lucky to work with some students that are current members of Milton Avenue School. When they come in to sit down to do some work, the first thing they want to show me is the book that Mrs. Mills picked out for them. She has a real connection with the children in that school. She makes everyone there feel special. And although we talk about all the numbers, we don't want to forget about the kids. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board, Dr. LaSousa, community members, and fellow staff. My name is Lee Patton-Rockoff, and I'm a third grade teacher at Milton Avenue School. I've been teaching for 14 years. I'm a Chatham High School graduate and a member of the Language Arts Leadership Team. I'm here tonight to talk to you about the need for Milton's own library media specialist. The immediate support we as teachers receive from our library media specialists on a daily basis is an asset in many ways. While preparing for lessons, the full-time library media specialist is able to pull books suggested in the curriculum and additional books to enhance the lessons. When books that are suggested are out of print, she is quickly able to suggest new books. This is all made more helpful by the fact that we can send a note with a student or a paraprofessional to pull a book at a moment's notice. Oftentimes, not just the book we requested will return, but 2 or 3 others that might be even better than we originally asked. The full-time media specialist joins our common planning time to assist in lesson design, as well as to give support in the area of finding resources like books, but also websites or other programs. Many times she is offered to introduce, extend, or enhance a lesson or skill that we are teaching. When a teacher finds a new book and shares it with the library media specialist, She immediately searches the Milton shelves to see if we already own a copy. If we do, she pulls it down and reads it herself. And if we don't, she immediately adds it to the cart for purchase. While I spent time rethinking the language arts curriculum this year for teaching during COVID-19, the library media specialist has recorded poetry, stopped by my room with exciting news about language arts, reached out to other New Jersey libraries in search of titles for us, and researched and sourced several new books. As our students end their Milton careers with us in 3rd grade, we benefit from the knowledge of our library media specialist, as she has known them longer than anyone else, potentially for as long as 5 to 6 years. We are able to reach out to her early in the fall and tap into her knowledge, which reaches far beyond the behaviors of a classroom. She knows their family lives, their work habits, their reading abilities, and is able to share books that they have recently read and loved. She is most helpful with our high readers and is able to suggest books that they would love to read that we may not even know ourselves. Our full-time library media specialist has met with students during her lunch period to find books, have conversations about books they've recently finished, or to support them in reading and writing. At any given time, you can find a student's own writing displayed in the library, highlighting their talents. In fact, tonight I heard that she even catalogs them, puts a barcode, and shelves the students' books so they can come back and look for them in the future. Milton Avenue School is the little school that makes a big difference. I stand here tonight representing my 3rd grade colleagues, but also all of our students. Yes, we may be few in number, but we are a community that supports one another personally and professionally. Taking away our full-time library media specialist will hurt our staff and our students, who benefit from the personal touch that she gives us all daily. One person who knows our 300+ students by name and their reading interests, priceless.
My name is Betsy Yates Long. I am CEA co-president. On behalf of our members, we would appreciate continuing our conversation around the reduction in force of our library media specialists by asking the following questions. We request the vision of how library media specialists will continue to provide all facets of their jobs: instruction, budgeting for new materials, maintaining their respective catalogs, and traveling between schools. We request a full administrative presentation of how our library media specialists will effectively balance schedules within the community between schools. We request the administration to incorporate library media specialists as a resource during new teacher orientations throughout the year. We request the administration to encourage interdisciplinary partnerships between our departments and our library media specialists. We request a vision for the 6th grade and 9th grade orientation in the first month of the school year. We request the reasoning behind a ratio at the high school and middle school level of 2,000 students to 1 library media specialist. And we also request the reasoning behind the addition of new administrative staff, aka the Dean of Students at the high school, while reducing in force the library staff who meet with all students. Thank you.
My name is Bob Vasecci. I live in Chatham. What I'm about to say, I'm going to offend some people, and quite frankly, I really don't care, because I'm a person, okay, that this town believes is a racist, okay? But I'm here to give some facts, Mr. Sousa. I'm here to give some facts. I'm offended by what's happening in this town.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can
Yes.
you please start over? We did not hear
My name is Bob
the majority
Vasecci.
of the first part of your comments.
My name is Bob Vasecci, and I'm going to say some things that are going to offend some people.
I'm not
Because
worried about
I
what
am
you're going to say.
offended. I am offended by what's happening here.
I'm just asking you to start over because we
My
couldn't
name is
hear
Bob
you.
Vasecci. I've been in town for 5 years, and I represent someone that this town thinks is a racist. I'm a volunteer fireman, and you know the first thing we do when we get a call? We find out if the person is a minority. And if they are a minority, we disregard them. Now, clearly that's false, but let me continue.
This is school business, right? School
Yeah,
board
this is
meeting?
this is absolutely school
Okay, I
business.
just want to make sure you're at the right meeting.
This is absolutely school business. Candace Owens declares the biggest issue facing Black America is father absence. Don't take my word for it. Take the word that question was asked, was posed to, what's the greatest threat to Black Americans? The former NAACP president, Kwame Nkrumah, said the biggest threat is father absence. I'll continue. It's not me. It's not the people that think like me in this town. Too many Black fathers, he said, are missing from too many lives and too many homes. They have abandoned their responsibilities, acting like boys instead of men. We know the statistics, that children who grow up without fathers are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of schools, and 20 times more likely to end up in prison. Barack Obama said that. Not me, not anybody in this town. I'll continue. 2019, just this month, the Bureau of Justice Statistics released in 2018 survey of criminal victimization. According to the study, there were 593,000 interracial violent victimizations between blacks and whites last year, meaning 2018, including white on black and black on white attacks. Of those approximately 600,000 victimizations, 537,000 of those interracial felons, or 90%, okay, were blacks committing
If you could wrap it up, please.
against whites. I have a minute left.
I'm sorry?
I have a minute left. I can see the sign.
No, that says time's up.
I can't see.
Oh, well, I'm going to help you. That's 30 seconds. If you could just wrap it up.
This is a school issue because I am being villainized for these facts.
I hear
have
you,
more
but
facts.
I'm just asking you to summarize and wrap it up so everybody can fairly
I'll
have the
summarize
same amount of
very
time.
briefly. The teachers, as a matter of fact, Heather Racco needs to resign.
You need to wrap it up,
Steve Mayer
sir.
needs to resign.
You need to wrap it up.
Those are my ending. I'll add one other thing. There were 2 other parents, okay, 2 other black parents in this community that effectively said they have not witnessed or been part of any victimization in this town.
Okay, thank you,
But
sir.
somehow,
Thank you, sir.
somehow,
Excuse me, sir,
I'm the
please
problem.
don't force me to call an adjournment, just so, because folks
why
still
not
want to
call an
talk.
adjournment?
Thank you.
I hope I offended
Please,
some people.
please
because I
continue,
am
please.
offended.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Noonan. I'm the co-president of CEA. I've been asked to finish Beth Thomas's statement. I want to take the time to address the impacts of the cut of the middle school position. Now, 2,300 students will not have access to a full-time school library media specialist, and this is not the first time the high school population will be impacted by cuts. I had 2 Chatham parents complete their school library media specialist field work with me so I could recall when the high school library was staffed by teachers for a duty period. I believe this was after a major renovation of the facility. Can you imagine renovating a gymnasium and not staffing it with certified physical education teachers, or renovating science labs and not staffing them with certified science teachers? School library media specialists are certified to maintain a facility and teach information literacy. We are experts in information science. We have all seen the impacts of misinformation and disinformation on our society and our democracy. And after the events of January 6th, I cannot fathom a district cutting a staff member whose entire curriculum is based on information literacy. In closing, I would like to state that it is rare for a district to have such a leader among its staff members, and it breaks my heart that the students and staff at the Milton Avenue School are losing this leader. My heart breaks for the students and staff of the school who will now have to share their school library media specialist with Milton. My heart breaks for the students of the middle and high schools because I know that they will not be as prepared for undergraduate academic research. We have heard from our academic librarian colleagues about the deficiency they and the professors are seeing when students who have not had access to a strong school library program enter college not knowing how to use a library. Those of us who work in education have seen the headlines about learning loss and the gaps our students will be facing as we return to some semblance of normalcy. It is never a good time to cut the school library media specialists, but the current timing could not be worse. Chatham School Library Media Specialists have been working harder than ever this year to support their students' academic and social emotional needs, and these students will need them just as much, if not more, next year and into the future. Sincerely, Beth Thomas, President, NJASL. Thank you.
Good evening and happy School Library Month. I am Jill Mills, the current School Library Media Specialist at Milton Avenue School and immediate past president of the New Jersey Association of School Librarians. And while I was prepared to speak tonight to my friends and colleagues, I am humbled by the outpouring of support from the entire community. While the district will dismantle the school library media programs, I am the only one being asked to leave the district. So, as you may have heard, I have been informed that after 10 years, my position at Milton Avenue School will be eliminated. RIFT is the term. 11 years ago, I was RIFT from another district due to budget cuts. That was hard, and it hurt. What is harder still, though, is to learn that your position is being eliminated, but not due to budget cuts. Rather, because the scope of your work is not fully seen and therefore not properly valued. As I said, though, I have been here before, and I rallied, and I will do it again. I want to take this opportunity, however, to thank some important people who guided me these past 10 years. First, I would like to thank Marion McCarthy for seeing that I would be a good fit at Milton Avenue School. I think she was right, which is why I would like to thank my Milton Avenue School colleagues, my Milton Avenue family, if I'm being honest. Thank you for your love and support through these last 10 years, which have included some of my most joyful and most fragile moments. Thank you for always taking care of me. I want to thank my team of related arts specialists, the RA team. There are no real words for what you mean to me, but I will forever carry you in my heart. Thank you to my New Jersey Association of School Librarians and Morris County School Media Association colleagues and friends. Thank you for tirelessly working to elevate the role of school library media specialists across the state. By example, you have challenged me to continually grow in my own professionalism and in our craft. You are the model we should all be striving toward. One librarian in particular that I would like to thank is Mary Zook. Mary and I have been colleagues and friends for nearly 15 years. When Mary and I were riffed from our other district, Mary came to Chatham first. She was instrumental in bringing me to Chatham too. When Mary heard these cuts meant that I would be losing my position, she offered to retire early so I could keep my job. I could not ask that of her, but my wish for you is that you all have a Mary Zook in your life. Finally, I want to thank my students and their families. My students are my joy and my purpose. No one can make you feel as good as an elementary student. Over these past 10 years, my students have showered me with kind words and gifts of the heart. I was once told, "Mrs. Mills, whenever I see you, you look good." Honestly, you can't hear that enough, and if not for my students, I wouldn't hear it at all. Right, Mr. Mills? But sincerely to every student, past or present, or every family that reached out in support, thank you. You have validated me. And while I may never convince some, it's nice to know that so many have seen and therefore valued my work. In the immortal words of Pete the cat, did Pete cry? Goodness no. He kept walking along and singing his song. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. That's an excellent part to
Jill, if I can interrupt.
end the
Thank you
public
to everyone
commentary.
who spoke. if I can remind everyone, and I'm not sure if everybody did, please sign the public commentary sheet to note that you did speak at the meeting, as well as what I recorded. Thank you. Sorry, Tom.
Thank you. Great. So since this is mostly an administrative decision, I'm going to ask Dr. LaSousa to maybe make some comments or answer any questions or clarify anything, and then if the board then has any comments or questions after that, we'll follow up. So Dr. LaSousa, over to you for now.
Well, I think obviously I know many of the people who commented tonight, at least all of the staff members. They're excellent at what they do. They're dedicated and they love kids, and they're great educators, which helps make this district what it is. And I respect every one of them, even though I have a different viewpoint. So Mary Zook spoke earlier about coming here 11 years ago. That was the exact moment when I was transitioning into the central office. It was like this time of the year I was becoming assistant superintendent, and at that time I was involved in many conversations about dedicating staff at the K through 3 schools. At the time, if my memory serves me right, apart from the fact that we had only 2 library media center specialists to cover the 3 schools, we had only 1 dedicated counselor, I think, at that level. We had only 1 health teacher, I think, that traveled between the 3 schools. So there were many conversations that were happening about dedicating staff to the pre-K 3 schools because the enrollment had gone up so much. And right as she began was when we were at our peak of 1,340 some odd students. Where I, differ from most of the comments tonight is that there comes a point, enrollment can't decline indefinitely until it gets to 0 or 100 or 50 or 180, where there aren't corrections that have to happen. And I believe that when you lose a third or 30% or whatever it might be of your students in your sections, then that leads to corrections. And at the K3 level, that's where we are from my point of view, like I said at the beginning of the meeting. At the 6-12 level, yes, everything stated about ratios is accurate. I'm sure that there are folks here who know that the requirement in New Jersey is 1 library media center staff member per district. And there are districts with much higher ratios. Some of them are good districts comparable to us, some of them maybe not. The fact that I've been involved in all of these conversations and I have recommendations to make the board doesn't mean that I don't think less about literacy or about research. I practically lived at Alexander Library for a couple of years earlier in my life. It's just a recognition that sometimes we either need to make a correction because of enrollment or other reasons, or we can make an adjustment because we think that we can accomplish what we're doing in a different way. And that might take some growing pains, or it might take some time. It might take a lot of coordination. It, of course, would involve the individual who would be captaining that coordination. But I continue to think that having the 4 library media center specialists is not going to diminish the programming that we have, and that we can accomplish what we need to accomplish as a result of a variety of factors, including the enrollment loss and a whole other set of issues in the district. So that's what I would say, just to kind of summarize my thoughts at this point. And I thank everyone for coming and sharing their eloquent statements and their arguments about why they believe so fervently in the library media center programs in the schools.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. And I want to echo that. I want to thank everybody for sharing their experiences. And, again, I'd hate to think that we were having programs that people didn't absolutely love or staff that we didn't absolutely love. We certainly all believe in the programs. We believe in the curriculum. We believe in the services. We believe in literacy. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. We'd be home watching the Sesame Street 50-year anniversary. We wouldn't be sitting here for hours and volunteering our time if we didn't believe in literacy or the programs that we offer. But Dr. LaSousa, based on what folks said, I got to ask you some pointed questions, and I'm going to pick on Mr. Bazralian just because he's a good sport. Do you believe that we're being overly aggressive in reducing staff?
I think that's a legitimate question to ask.
I'll say this: this was not a sudden thing. I've discussed this with some of you for a year or two now, in line with our enrollment declines and what we're seeing in conversations that I have every year with principals and supervisors about what we can, how we should look the following year as we're staffing up the schools. A year ago, I had planned on making an adjustment by going to making a half cut for this current school year, and then moving towards a full FTE moving into next year. And when we hit February or January at some point last year, I just tabled everything I was considering moving forward because of the pandemic and the uncertainty and not knowing what was going on. So, I mean, I think the question that you're asking to me is really about, I think it's appropriate to make the adjustments. Should the adjustments happen over, in 1 year, like I have recommended to you to this point, or over 2 years, like I was planning on doing last year? That's a legitimate question.
And then also, the enrollment, this is a function of enrollment. This is an efficiency thing. I also look at other residents in the audience that have come to us over at least the last 10 years that I've been sitting on this table to ensure that we sharpen our pencils, make sure that we're deploying our resources effectively, ensuring that we're asking for what we need, not necessarily what we want. So again, picking on Mr. Bazralian, I mean, I don't know that if the administration is recommending that we can we continue instilling a love of reading and supporting students and creating a safe place and exposure to digital media and organizing fun activities and help finding a book and inspiring a love of reading and guiding individuals, students to pick the right match book and explain various genres. Are we going to be able to continue our level of service and the programs and the curriculum that our students, I mean, you can't go from 360 students to 220 and not have some reduction in staff. And I have to look at the residents that are saying, listen, we're okay to support you when you have an increase in enrollment, but now we lost 140 kids. I think if this is just an operational efficiency, then I don't know that I can, go against your recommendation and say, well, let's just keep staff on because they're excellent, and they are excellent. But that comes with a price as well. So are the programs and the students, when they go to the library, they're still going to have a librarian in the, for their scheduled time?
Yes, the answer is, of course, we're going to schedule Library Media Center time in the same way we have been, where there's a dedicated Library and Media Center specialist. Obviously, we've heard comments tonight where when you have that person available all day long when she's not scheduled for direct instruction of students, there is more flexibility in what other teachers in the building can expect or when they can direct students down there. Reducing staff requires much more planning and much more scheduling in advance, and there are certainly sacrifices to that if you're accustomed to having an individual who's present all of the time. So the answer is, of course, I wouldn't make any recommendation if I thought it was going to dismantle or decimate any program in the district. But there are always adjustments that you then undertake in order to facilitate the ongoing delivery of the programs that you're talking about.
Okay, thanks. And I mean, I'm just, for myself, I'm going to close. As I said, it would be the easiest decision in the world to say, sure, let's kick the can down the road. But it's, unfortunately, this is probably the worst volunteer job in the district. It's just not the job. Sometimes we have to make decisions and go with recommendation. We're not educators. We're going based on the recommendation of the administration. We're trying to be prudent, not overly aggressive, but also not stay overly staffed, because this may be a continuing trend for a bit until things maybe turn around. So I'm going to pause here. As I said, it's probably the worst volunteer job in the district, but sometimes it's the job. You have to make the decisions. It'd be easier to say keep everybody on staff and be overstaffed, but that's simply not the job. So I'm going to pause and let anybody else, Mr. Ryan, take it over.
I have a couple of comments. Dr. LaSousa, you know me since I've been on the Finance Committee. I'm all about efficiencies, right? I know, for example, that we pay 27 cents for K-Cups in the central office, right? So in my view, efficiency should be accomplished in every way that you can, but the goal should be to improve what you're doing, not to maintain status quo. So I don't hear that the library and media services, programming is going to improve. It's going to stay the same way, hopefully, right? So how much weight do you give in your decision making toward the way that these folks help the other staff versus direct student instruction? So in my view, you need to weigh both of those against each other. And given what we've been through this past year, we don't know what we're going to get when the kids come back. So I like to take an all hands on deck approach to this. Have you thought about that at all?
Yes, of course.
I know you have.
Yeah. I mean, all of this is part of the equation. And I've talked about this with our principals and with others to ensure that whatever we're accustomed to getting or providing now will continue. That too takes much more scheduling, and there's less impromptu support that can happen. Obviously, if you have, one person traveling between two schools or two people traveling between three schools, you're going to have less ability to access that person if you're not scheduling it in advance, or you don't have a schedule that's ironed out that everyone is aware of, so they know who's in the building at which time. And we experience that now with...
So it's actually becoming less efficient.
Becoming less of an issue, is that what you said?
Less efficient. Just my view.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd describe that as less efficient. I mean, I think that depends on how you're defining efficiency. If you're accomplishing the same thing, in other words, with less money, for example, or less positions, then it is more efficient.
So it's more efficient because we're saving money, or is it more efficient because the services are better and the people that are tasked with providing those services can do it easier?
I think
it sounds like it's going to be more difficult for the people that we retain to provide the same level of service. I know.
Yeah, I think, Mike, that's accurate. I mean, I think if you could say the same thing about any position in the district. We could say that, like the example that I gave earlier about 120 students register for first grade at Southern, and the next year 100 register. If you keep the 6 sections and you don't have 20 kids in a section, but you only have whatever the number is, 100 divided by 6, then you could, of course that's the case with almost any position in the district, right?
Yeah, no, I agree, and eventually something has to give on this issue, but I don't think that right now, given what we've been through this whole year, and not knowing the emotional condition and emotional state of the kids when they come back, I don't think this is the right timing for this. But it's your decision, not mine. It's not my decision, it's yours.
Yeah, I think I just want to interject here. We have 3 agendas tonight. We have the agenda that we're in right now, right, or 3 sections of action items for the board agenda. We have 2 separate executive sessions. One over one action, and the individual who's involved in that action requested that the discussion be held in public. And then we have a second executive session because there are 2 other employment actions, and those individuals did not request that the matter be discussed in public. So I just want to make sure that we're speaking generally enough that it's appropriate for the agenda that we're in, and that if we're getting into specific positions and discussions about specific individuals, we stay in the executive sessions because we have different requests from different staff members. And Beth can chime in about just making sure that we're doing that.
I think more folks, more board members want to make a comment. Mike, are you saying that we need to hold off until we're at that executive session, but in public?
Yeah, I think if your discussion is revolving around action that you may or may not take on a recommendation that I make, that doesn't belong in the regular agenda right now. That belongs in one of the 2 executive sessions that are specific to staff members.
Okay.
If you have general questions like Mike just did about efficiencies or about
Right.
staff members or about the number of positions in
I
shared
think they're
between
more-
schools,
I think they're more
that's
general.
fine.
I think they're more general.
Mhm.
I'm gonna call they're more general and let the folks continue.
We're having like a lot of tech issues. No, now it's working, but this one's dead. I have a question just about just shared staff in general, and I know that we do have some staff, and I'm thinking, I guess I don't know if it's K3, I don't think it's at Lafayette, but art, music teachers that might be shared between buildings. Can you give the board some flavor as to what does that look like, and why were those decisions made at that time? How long was it driven by enrollment? I need to get a little more clarity as to what other staff is shared between buildings and why. And is it enrollment based or is it building based and need based? Like, is there a shortage in one end or the other?
Yeah, I mean, we have staff shared all over the district at the K3 level. We have 2 art teachers that cover the 3 schools. That's based on the sections and the number of, the enrollment, essentially. Ditto music. We've had that structure in place for a pretty long time. I'm not sure how many years. Depending on the year, we have other shared staff. So this year, for example, our school counselor at Washington resigned in the summer. We didn't replace that person until recently, so there was some shared staff between Milton and Washington. That kind of that ebbs and flows depending on the year. Art and music have consistently been shared between buildings. One year we shared phys ed staff between Lafayette and Southern, and then of course at the other levels we have shared staff fairly frequently.
To say that someone's like AM at one school, PM in another, or like Monday you're at, I'm just picking schools out of my head, you're at Washington, Tuesday you're at Milton, Wednesday you're at Southern, and you like,
Yes.
I don't mean to be getting into the weeds,
Yep.
but I just want to kind of get a more concrete understanding.
Yes, and that depends on the building schedules and what the principals communicate when they develop their master schedules together. And yeah, that's par for the course, I'd say.
In terms of the shared services, the special programs that, say, the music teacher might put on in terms of the concerts, has there been a reduction in productions and other things like that?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, they coordinate that with the supervisor and the principals, and they make sure that there are no conflicts.
A follow-up on one of the comments that was made at the high school level in terms of the research. In terms of the research instruction that the students at the high school would be getting, how do you envision that instruction to be replaced with the reduction in?
I envision that the same way, that staff members who are going to coordinate research lessons and activities and need resources curated would communicate with the library media center specialist, and they would have a schedule that is laid out one way or another about whether it's days of the week, like Michelle said, or AM, PM, or it's something else. I know I've spoken to the principals a bit about this, and they're both flexible, so they recognize there might be times when An individual might have to be in one place for a full week of time. Other times they might be able to stick to a day by day schedule so that it's predictable for teachers, but it would be something that has to be scheduled in advance.
The library will be open either way. Both, if the library's media specialist from the high school is over at the middle school, who is staffing the library at the high school library at the time? But who's going to be there, or how many people, and how accessible is it for all the kids who will want to be into the library?
That will be some combination of paraprofessionals, teaching staff, secretary, if that's the way to go, but some combination of adults that are employed at the school.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to hold any additional comments or specific comments to that executive session, so we don't violate any rules here. So, Mike, we're just going to go through the regular agenda, the full agenda, all of the items, and then we're going to break into executive session, but in public, and stay right here. Okay, so we should be there in a few minutes if you folks want to hang out a moment. Excellent. Okay, so we're going to move on to the regular agenda. So personnel, Ann, would you move the personnel items?
Yes, I'd like to move agenda items A1 to A22 on the regular agenda, as well as 2, 5, 10, and 23 on the addendum.
Okay. Peter, did you hear Mikey seconded it? Excellent. Any questions on any of the personnel items on the regular agenda?
Before the questions, I just have to note a minor correction on A3 to the agenda that was published on Friday, not to the one that you have in your hands, but on A3, Kevin Bear is at step 420. Both Ramon Matias and Nori Fazia will be at CHS, not Lafayette.
Okay. On 23?
On A3.
A3, I'm sorry. Excellent. Does anybody else have any questions, or does anybody have any questions on the regular agenda items? No? No. Peter, would you mind taking?
Agenda items A1 to 22 with addendum 2, 5, 10, and 23, and the verbal correction to A3. Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Del Sandro? Yes. Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Smith? And Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Agenda items pass 7-0.
Excellent. Mr. Ryan, could you move finance and facilities in Mr. Gilfillan's absence?
Yes, I'd like to move agenda items B1 through 21.
Second.
Okay, excellent. Any questions on any of the finance or facility items? No. Peter?
Agenda items B1 through B21. Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Del Sandro? Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
And Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Agenda items pass 7-0.
Excellent, thank you. And Ms. Kenny, curriculum items?
Yes, I'd like to move
Excellent. So the first two we can't talk about. The school calendar, Dr. LaSousa, this is the 22-23 calendar. And again, this takes into consideration the parent survey that we did, as well as you met with some of the staff?
I met with the CEA presidents.
Okay.
And we've made sure that the calendar reflected some of the concerns that they had.
Okay.
So again, just the highlight figure here is that the first day of school for students is August 25th. I think that's what it is. Is it 25th or 6th, right?
Yes.
25th, right. So it doesn't start as early as one of the original drafts that the board discussed, but it starts about a week or so before the Labor Day holiday.
Okay, excellent. I just wanted to call it out. We've had this on board business for the last few meetings. Does anybody else have any questions or comments on anything curriculum? No. Okay, Peter?
Agenda items C1 to C3. Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. D'Alessandro? Yes. Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Smith? Yes. And Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Passes, C1 to C3 passes 7-0.
Excellent. And Mr. Ryan, back to you for policy.
I'd like to move agenda item D1.
I'll second that. Mr. Ryan, would you mind reading all of those policies out loud for us in their entirety? We'll wait. No, you're passing?
Try reading the full text.
Understood.
Below it.
Excellent. Does anybody have any questions for the policy committee on any of those items? Some of those are Strauss-Esme, some of those are initiated by the policy committee. Any questions on any of those items? No. Peter?
Sure. Agenda item D1. Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. D'Alessandro? Ms. Kenny? Yes. Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Smith? Yes. And Ms. Weber? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, agenda item
Sorry about
D1 passes 7-0.
Sorry, I apologize. Excellent. So board business, does anybody have any new or old or any additional board business they'd like to bring up at this time? No? Okay, very good. Then we have our second opportunity for public commentary, and then we will be doing an executive session in public. So we have our second opportunity for public commentary. If you would introduce yourself, that would be great. And if you could keep it to the same amount of time.
Jane Devlin and Jane. I don't want to be redundant, but I just want to urge again, you take as a totality all you heard here tonight. There is no appetite for your decision. So perhaps you can go back to the drawing board and just revisit some dynamics of it. I also want to please ask if any emails or letters received, even if they're not read into the record, be memorialized simply by stating how many letters were received on this issue. The final two things I want to discuss is I want to speak petition. Please be aware there is over 600 signatures on a petition opposing this decision. I can provide the link if need be. And very lastly, I am concerned about what I heard stated earlier tonight, that a principal shut down or quieted students who were advocating on this matter by student petition. However, not knowing all the facts, I won't fully weigh in on it, but I do hope someone in administration looks into that, and if that did occur, by the actions of the principal. That's it. The only thing, even though we were reminded to sign in, there was 2 microphones and only 1 sign-in sheet. So I think a lot of the public that did voice their opinions aren't memorialized in the sign-in sheet. So I hope you bear in mind there was larger numbers of people stepping to the microphone than is indicated on the sign-in sheet. So thank you again for the opportunity to explain these other comments and thoughts I had. Good night.
Good evening, Bill Heap, Chatham Borough. I'm going to take a bit of a contrarian position here. It'll probably not get any applause. I don't take any position on whether these are the right staff members to eliminate or not. That is way above my pay grade. What I can tell you is that I've run a small business for 45 years, and I have had to lay people off. And it was one of the most gut-wrenching things that I have ever done. In many ways, I have considered it a personal failure, and I still dream about it. I do not envy you. For a long time, we have beat the demographic odds. For the last 8 or 10 years that I have come to board meetings, I can tell you that year after year, the demographer has told us that the numbers are going to go down. And they didn't. Somehow we were an outlier. Many districts like Summit and Westfield are in reduction mode. And it could very well be at this point that the demographic chickens have come home to roost. I want to assure that my fellow citizens that I know this board. I have not hesitated to disagree with them when I felt it necessary, but I want to assure everybody that you do not take these situations lightly. I have laid people off, and I wouldn't want to be in your shoes at all. I don't envy you, and I think you've conducted yourselves very well tonight. So I want to congratulate you.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Jane. Okay, so seeing no other public commentary, and I was going to, at the end of the second public commentary, which is now, we did receive 20 emails. 8 of them were from residents, and 12 of them were from either staff or professional advocacy groups. Carol, I put you in the parent-resident column, not the librarian column. Although you're both. So we did receive 20 emails, 8 of which were from residents. So there you go, Jane. Certainly. So that's the end of the public commentary. So this is probably the first time I've ever done this. We're going right into executive session. Do we have to close the previous session? Okay, so I make a motion to move to executive session. I'm not actually going anywhere, but here we are. We've arrived in the executive session now.
I second.
Do we vote on going into executive session, or we just arrive?
We're here. We're in.
Okay. No, I'm just curious. More. Hey, give me this mic. Excellent. Okay, so now we're moving on specifically the Milton Avenue staff position.
Correct. So Beth,
An agenda is being distributed as you speak, or as we speak.
Oh, good.
And the
Thank you.
The agenda contains one action item.
It's funny, in 10 years, this is the first time we've ever done this.
The procedure is to discuss the action item in the executive session, close the executive session to then vote on the item on addendum 2, which would be A24. So anything can be discussed now in the executive session amongst the board or administration, but the voting on A24 will be done when we close the executive and move to public session.
Okay. Does Ann need to move action item A24?
When we end executive session number 1, yes.
Oh, okay. Very good. Okay, so is there additional specific comments on this particular position? Mr. Smith? This is the elimination of a full-time elementary library media specialist. That's correct.
Right, I'm sorry, I wasn't on before. Joe brought it up before, Bill Heap.
briefly, I know we spoke about it prior at other meetings, that there are certain roles that we have as board members. And one is to oversee ethically that the board is running, or that the school district is running correctly. We do not run the school district. But one thing we do oversee is the fiduciary responsibility to 20,000 some odd residents. So I guess in that light, specifically, it would be helpful for me to understand specifically what this role accomplishes in terms of actual students being able to show up on a K-3 level and check in versus having a dedicated time that is not being eliminated.
So the schedule would start with a dedicated time, and the elementary principals build a master schedule that revolves principally, honestly, around special education and making sure that all those students can get their services at a coordinated time by grade level. And then specials are inserted to ensure that every section receives, like if it's art, they get art once a week, or whatever the subject might be. Obviously, elementary schools don't function like a high school or a middle or a high school in particular, where students have a study hall in their day, or at lunchtime they can kind of wander wherever, not wherever they want, but they can go to the library or the cafeteria or some other space. So I think what's most common is that, and you heard this tonight, teachers would send a reluctant reader or a pair of kids or what have you to the Library Media Center to check in with the Library Media Center specialist, find an appropriate book. Obviously, if the person was engaged in a class at that time, it would be a little bit more difficult to give some one-on-one attention to kids like that. But at other points in the day, they can do that, and they can create a welcoming environment and nurturing place. And then by knowing the interests and the reading level of students, they can provide them with the appropriate resources or recommendations. So it happens. It's not like it happens at the high school, because at the high school there aren't really, ongoing weekly schedules that all teachers adhere to bring students to the LMC.
So
Correct. And at the elementary level, that person would almost certainly be either a paraprofessional or a secretary if we employ. We've pretty much eliminated secretarial positions from the media centers. We used to have them. Whereas at the high school and middle school, you can schedule teachers into those slots because teachers have time in the day where they're doing something else other than teaching. At the elementary level, the classroom teachers don't have that. When their kids are with them, their kids are with them, and when their kids are not, it's a prep, pretty much.
And one follow-up question. Is it safe to say that the majority of the co-teaching work that the teachers do with the library media specialist is done electronically versus in person? What I'm trying to get at is how much of that collaboration will result in a loss from them not being in person?
I think outside of this year, most of that would always occur in person. And as you heard tonight, that's an area that would be a challenge. I mean, that's a challenge. That's something that we'd have to coordinate well and ensure that the teachers are getting what they need and the library media center specialist is available for those teachers. And that's also where the loss of sections comes into play. Because when you have fewer sections, like I said before, we had 32 sections at Lafayette. Right now we have 28. We have 28 sections at Lafayette. If you look at Washington, we have 12. As of September, we'll have 12 at Washington, grades 1 through 3. We'll have one other full-day kindergarten section for 13 full sections, and then 2 half-day kindergarten sections. So you're looking at 28, and that's occurring over a 6-day cycle, versus 13 plus 2 halves. Having fewer sections means that there's more time then available for whatever else you're scheduling, which is why to me, I think we're at a place where we have to have a correction, or it would be prudent to have a correction because the number of sections has fallen so dramatically at the K-3 level.
Could you talk us through the decision process of selecting this school rather than SBS or Washington Ave?
Well, the decision process was taken out of our hands because it's simply a matter of seniority. So you heard nothing but praise from Miss Mills, which is all that I've heard for 10 years about Miss Mills. She's terrific. There's no debating that, and she is a leader in the statewide organization. She's not someone we'd want to lose in the district, but she's got the least seniority at the K-5 level. And that's not something that we have any influence or control over. So the mechanics of that, and again, Beth can weigh in anytime she wants, is that because we're talking about a tenured staff member, the first time we either add a library and media center specialist position back, or the first time someone resigns who currently is tenured, Ms. Mills would be the first person to be offered that position, and she could accept it or refuse it.
Dr. LaSouza, is the seniority based on time here in Chatham or time at the state level?
No, in Chatham.
Okay.
And in the position.
This is more of a general question. A gen ed teacher or a teacher at the really any level, on average, and I know you can't give me an exact number, but on average, how many prep periods or non-instructional periods does a teacher have in a week or a day? And if I'm using the wrong terminology, Michelle, steer me right here.
The contract with the CEA requires that teachers have at least, they have lunch every day and one prep period. So that's a minimum of 5 a week, and usually we can schedule 1 or 2 more to, for comment,
Okay.
to give a little more flexibility in the schedule.
5 to 7
But
a week?
I'd say that that's a good estimate.
What we're talking about is not enough sections to fill some of these instructional time. Again, generally speaking, in the library, since this is the topic we're on, in the library, are there more than 5 prep periods in a week or non-instructional time, given that we've lost 140 students again?
Yes, well, that's what happens when you lose sections. So there are more preps for the specialists as the sections decline. So like, as I showed earlier, we're going to lose a section out of Southern and 1 out of Washington, and that is a 40-minute block, if you can picture it like that, for the art or music or phys ed, whichever teacher you're talking about. That's a 40-minute block removed from their week that they would be scheduled to deliver instruction for.
Okay, because I know you looked at the schedule, and we just didn't have enough students to support 3 full-time people as much as we'd like to. As I mentioned before, I think it's the easiest thing in the world to be the hero and keep extra staff on. And, of course, Ms. Mills is fantastic, and it's not about that. But unfortunately, this is what fiscal responsibility looks like. And it's the hard part of the job, but it is the job. Would it be easier to say, yes, keep all the extra, additional staff on because you're telling me it's not the most efficient, it's not the most effective. But, when people write letters to the editors and say the board needs to be more fiscally responsible, this is what it looks like. The board needs to be more transparent. This is what it looks like. You can't be fiscally responsible when it suits you and not when it doesn't feel good. And it doesn't feel good here, but again, that's still the job. So I don't have any additional questions or comments. I just, this is the job. The job is to make sure the district is run well, and part of that is ensuring all of our resources are deployed effectively. Does anybody else have any questions or comments before we move someplace else to regular session? No? I don't want to cut anybody off. No? Okay. So, Peter, we're going to close executive session. And then...
So I have to move the action item, correct?
So now we're back? We're back in regular session? Yes. Okay, I don't know if your mic is on, but you
For the
are...
record, you made the motion to close Executive 1, and it was seconded by Mr. Ciccarelli.
Excellent. So now we're back in regular session. So Ms. Chigarelli, would you mind taking action on Personnel 24?
So I want to move action item A24 on addendum number 2.
I'll second it. There's certainly, we could have additional comments if folks thought of something in the last 30 seconds. No. All right, Peter, I think we're ready to take a vote on that one.
Agenda item A24, which is the abolishment of the elementary library media specialist position for anyone in the audience or at home. Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark? Yes. Mr. Del Sandro? Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
No.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
And Ms. Weber?
Reluctantly, yes.
Agenda item A24 passes 6-1.
Again, I'm sorry, it's the job. You're not going to have more friends when you leave the board. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. We still have some items to cover, so board members, you're going to have to stay back. We do. We do. Okay, so
now
now
we move to go into executive session, which will be private, and we'll move to the band room.
closed executive session. And action will
And
be taken.
action will be taken.
Action will be taken. Okay, very good. So we can come back, or you could